I'm from NPR News. I'm Corva Coleman. The U.S. Supreme Court will allow South Carolina to remove the health care entity Planned Parenthood from its state Medicaid program. South Carolina had objected over the group's role in providing abortions, but Medicaid funds generally cannot be used to fund the procedure. Still, South Carolina's governor had pulled Planned Parenthood from state Medicaid offerings. The Supreme Court has affirmed that action in a 6-3 decision. Senate Republicans are hitting a setback in their effort to pass a massive tax cut and spending bill. The nonpartisan Senate parliamentarian has ruled against a key provision. It could scuttle plans for a vote on the bill by the end of the week. The parliamentarian's decision is over how the GOP seeks to address Medicaid providers and how they're taxed. The official says this GOP plan does not adhere to Senate rules. The plan to change how Medicaid providers are taxed was intended to help offset the costs of the bill's tax cuts. President Trump's nominee to lead the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention appeared before a Senate panel yesterday. NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin reports Susan Menares is the second nominee for the job. That's because Trump's first choice couldn't gain enough Senate support due to his anti-vaccine views.
Vaccines were the main topic at the hearing for the CDC director nominee, Susan Menares. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. built his fame and fortune advocating against vaccines. Menares sidestepped many questions about whether she disagreed with actions taken by Kennedy, including his announcement that the U.S. would stop contributing to the Global Vaccine Alliance.
I think vaccines save lives. I think that we need to continue to support the promotion of utilization of vaccines. I wasn't involved in that decision making. If I'm confirmed as a CDC director, I will certainly look into it.
Menares is the rare insider to be elevated under Kennedy. She is not a physician. Her doctorate is in microbiology. Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News, Washington.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says reports from other groups, including a UN agency, confirm U.S. attacks on Iran's nuclear sites were destructive. However, Hegseth says he has no intelligence on whether Iran previously moved its uranium. NATO leaders have voted to significantly increase their defense spending. President Trump says he is pleased because he's been demanding this for a long time. But NPR's Deepa Shivaram says Trump's future relationship with the NATO allies may be unclear.
There are still some lingering questions from allies about how reliable the U.S. is. For example, Trump was pretty fed up with Spain at the summit because Spain has said they won't be acting on the increase in defense spending that all the allies agreed to. And Trump said Spain was terrible and unfair, and he would essentially punish Spain for that decision by making them pay more in tariffs. So there's still ways that Trump is complicating these relationships with allies.
NPR's Deepa Shivaram reporting. You're listening to NPR News.
And from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Judy Ewell. The superintendent of schools in Newton is informing parents that their children must be up to date with their vaccinations to attend school across the district in September. Anna Nolan said in a memo to the school committee that she's reinstating vaccine requirements that were waived by the former superintendent during the COVID pandemic. Nolan says she recently learned during an outbreak of chickenpox that 182 students aren't fully vaccinated. 42 of them aren't immunized against the measles. State law requires that public school students be vaccinated against illnesses including measles, mumps, and rubella, and the State Department of Public Health recently reported one case of measles linked to international travel. It's been a busy week for the Celtics after the team traded away key players Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. The team selected Spanish player Hugo Gonzalez in the 28th pick of the draft last night. The 19-year-old Gonzalez played with the Spanish club Real Madrid. He averaged about 5 points last season. Celtics president of basketball operations Brad Stevens said the team has been watching Gonzalez for quite a while.
He goes after the ball. He competes. Like he's got all the intangibles of a winning basketball player. And there's things he can get better at, just like everybody else at that age. But competitiveness is not, it's at a high level.
Now, Stevens didn't offer a timeline on Jason Tatum's return, but he did say that Tatum is making great progress. We're getting a break from the heat with wet weather ahead. A chance of showers this afternoon, highs in the 70s right now. It's 70 in Boston.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Lilly Endowment, a private foundation supporting NPR's coverage of religion and spirituality, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
Hey, it's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Yeagan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow for Live Music Friday, care of the Charles River Jazz Festival. This is going to be great. Plus, NPR's Eric Deggans for our Press Play segment, environmentalist Bill McKibben, and our media maven Sue O'Connell, fresh from the Karen Reed trial. We talked about that for at least 20 minutes, Jim. Hello.
Oh, hello. Oh, I didn't know there was a hello. Hi to you, Margaret.
Hi, Jim.
Up first this hour, Public Library tomorrow with a packed show. NPR's Eric Deggans for our Press Play segment, live music, and more. 10 years ago today, the Supreme Court made gay marriage the law of the land, ruling in Obergefell v. Hodges. It's also 3 years, as I'm sure you know, this week since the court overturned Roe v. Wade in its Dobbs decision. We're going to talk more about that later in the show with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley in the 1 o'clock hour. But to start today's show, I want your reflections on the Obergefell decision 10 years after the fact, how you're feeling in 2025 about LGBTQ equality. Is it at risk? Are we making progress? You know, in some ways, it feels we've come a long way towards LGBTQ equality. In other aspects, if some of Trump's animus becomes reality, as some of it already is, we clearly are going backwards as well. 877-301-8970. What do you remember from that day 10 years ago? Are you someone who was married as a result of the decision? Here in Massachusetts, we've had former Chief Justice Margie Marshall on our show many times. Her decision here that started the whole thing was 10 years before that. Do you have anxiety over the future of same-sex marriage and rights in this country with the current makeup of the Supreme Court and the political leadership in Washington? All your thoughts on the 10th anniversary, 877-301-8970. Were you shocked? I was, by the Obergefell decision. I mean, the court was not nearly as rogue as it is now, but were you not surprised?
I was very surprised. I thought it's another indication of that American people want one thing, and the Supreme Court and a lot of the Republican Party wants another thing, which isn't what Americans want.
You know, by the way, I mentioned, I don't know with whom we were speaking the other day, but I can't remember. We were talking about many years ago, we were talking to Sue O'Connell about same-sex marriage long before it became law, and the national numbers were in the 30s or something. It's close to 70% today. Democrats, 88%, independents in the 70s. Sadly, I'm sure because of Trump loyalty, Republicans who used to support a same-sex marriage, 55%, is now down to 41%. Obviously, nothing has happened except the election of Trump that should cause that number to decline. And interestingly, even though he has a clear anti-LGBTQ agenda, he hasn't come out and said that this should be relooked at or repealed, unlike Clarence Thomas in his position in the overruling of Roe v. Wade. So we want to know where you think we are. 877-301-8970. And by the way, close to 2/3 of the states have constitutional or legislative bans on same-sex marriage, which are obviously inoperative because of the Obergefell decision. But should Obergefell ever be overturned, 32 states have already outlawed same-sex marriage. So that's the what the state law would be.
With these trigger things, it's just like the Dobbs decision.
Exactly.
The moment the Supreme Court overturns it, then it becomes illegal in the state. So that's very scary to people. But I remember years ago covering the controversy about gosh, when I was first a reporter, you get thrown out of your apartment if you were gay. You'd lose your job if you were gay. You couldn't. You had to kind of marry a woman and pretend you were straight to function. And people were hesitant about even going. The gay rights movement was hesitant about going for marriage. Remember, they thought that was a step too far. Let's just worry about protection of our rights and civil unions and stuff like that. And now, I think
some. I mean, some had that position. There were others, and the brilliant lawyer from Massachusetts, Mary Bonato, who changed history in lots of places.
But it was a few. It was a real minority.
Yeah, you're right,
I wrote a million stories about this, and now I think, and it was true then, that the big thing is, your sister's gay, your brother's gay, your kid is gay. Everybody knows somebody's gay. Everybody knows somebody who's gay and married with kids. I think it's changed people's perspective dramatically.
And so Donald Trump's animus, because in my view, this, by the way, I have nothing to base this on except his his history in New York, he really doesn't give a damn about any of these LGBTQ issues. Why
or
is
abortion, for that matter.
I agree with that. Why has he decided that because it gets him political points with his base?
Evangelicals.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very anti-gay, you know.
By the way, Jim Obergefell, obviously of Obergefell v. Hodges, was on NPR's Morning Edition this morning talking about his motivations for fighting to legalize same-sex marriage, which led to the Supreme Court decision. Here he is.
When John dies, his last record as an Ohioan, his last official record as a person will be wrong, because here where it says marital status at time of death, Ohio will say he was unmarried. And Jim, your name won't be listed as his surviving spouse, but we were lawfully married in Maryland, and we deserve to have our marriage recognized by the state we called home. John deserved to die a married man. We simply wanted dignity, and that's what motivated us to say, yes, let's fight the state of Ohio. And that's what took me all the way to the Supreme Court. We wanted to exist.
We wanted to exist.
And by the way,
man.
they flew in an airplane to Maryland, and they were married on the tarmac because his husband was so sick at that point that he was not able to get up and walk to get further than that, and he died shortly thereafter. But what a moving interview that was this morning.
877-301-8970. So what are your reflections 10 years after? Actually, in Massachusetts, it's 20-some years after.
2004.
Where do you think we are? I mean, this is one of the few areas where I have to say, and I'm optimistic about almost nothing, as you know, I think the direction we had been going in until November of last year is the direction we will continue to go. And with some major bumps along the road, there's no question about that. But I think a lot of progress has been made, and Trump notwithstanding, it's not going to, in the major sense, be reversed.
You know, in presidential politics, a lot of people love Pete Buttigieg. I remember when Pete Buttigieg came to the Boston Public Library when we
for our show, we call it, yes.
Yep, huge crowd there to see
when he's
him.
running for president.
Yes, and I think that a lot of people say, well, could he ever be a gay guy and become the president? I don't know.
We'll never have a black guy as president either, will we?
Exactly. So he's a really talented guy.
You know what else he does? He goes on all the right-wing shows, and to say that he gets the best of every one of them because he's so smart and so fact-based and doesn't back down is an understatement. Let's go to Lisa in Medford. We're talking about the 10th anniversary of the Supreme Court making same-sex marriage the law of the land. Hi.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie. Thank
Hello
you
there.
for taking my call.
Of course.
Sure.
Thank you. So when the Obergefell decision came down, I happened to be working in New York City, and I went to the Stonewall Inn to check out what was going on. It was such a good time. Everybody was so upbeat and uplifted, and it was nice to be in front of a historic place celebrating a historic decision. I'm not too afraid of it being overturned, to be honest with you. I shouldn't say that. My fingers are crossed, my toes are crossed, my legs are crossed as I say it.
Why? Why are you not?
I'm not afraid because I think the logistical nightmare, it's one thing, I cry for the abortion, the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Mm-hmm. But that was a little bit, it's easier to stop a medical procedure from happening than it is to absolve marriages and legality. So from that perspective, I hope that we have a little bit of cover. I just want, if you would allow me 2 seconds to encourage people to know their history. If you're a part of the LGBT community, know your history, know who fought for you, know why they fought for you, and continue to fight the good fight out there. Otherwise, we could be disappeared in other ways. So I just want to encourage people on this great day to keep up the good fight.
That was a wonderful start, Lisa. Thank you for calling. Thank you.
Chris in Central Square sends a great one. Has the world ended? How many heterosexual marriages were undermined
that was the
or
argument I forgot.
destroyed by gay marriage? That was the big argument. Remember that this is gonna ruin marriages. But I remember one of the great lines from this gay guy I interviewed once. He was saying, we want the right to get married. and be as miserable as everybody else.
You know, when Lisa just mentioned that incredible moment after the decision, she went to Stonewall, obviously, which is the perfect place in New York City. We've mentioned this before. On the night of the first same-sex marriage allowed in Massachusetts, was at Cambridge City Hall. Yeah. I bumped into someone you may know, Sue O'Connell.
Sue O'Connell.
And I have to say, it was one of the most joyous, beautiful nights I can ever I remember it literally like it was yesterday. Yeah. It was incredible. It was just incredible.
I don't know if you went with me. I think I might have gone to myself to the two guys who got married up in Gloucester.
As a matter of fact, they were listeners of our show. Yeah, I was right there.
That was right. I think that
was
the
early
first,
on.
Yeah,
that was
very
really
early on.
Incredible.
I think it might have been the first day, or if not, close to it. John in Westford, thank you for calling.
Hey, John, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
We're very well. Thanks for calling.
I just want to point out that Trump, I know you keep saying he's anti-LGBTQ, but I mean, he's always said he was for gay marriage or supported it all the way back to Oprah Winfrey when he was talking with or about John Lennon. Mm-hmm. And he was also the first president to appoint an openly gay cabinet
Scott
member,
Bessent.
Rick Grenell.
Oh, you're talking the first time,
yeah.
Right.
First time. And also at Mar-a-Lago, he had a same-sex gala, and his son also ministered, I don't know the words, the marriage of two gay men. And he's actually, being a New Yorker, when he was, he had a AIDS fund for, I forgot what it's called, Men's Health Initiative, to combat AIDS back in the 80s, separate from the whole Ryan White story and stuff.
Well, he used to be John. He was a liberal Democrat until he ran for president. He changed, as you may have noticed.
Actually, he said it was always a state issue, and he said it. And just like using a bathroom, that's how it all started. He told Caitlyn Jenner, "Feel free to use Trump Tower," and she did, and and she was out there making a big show of it. Media won't cover it, so I see it as all just a lot of hype.
Well, but John,
I think there are a lot of stories about Caitlyn Jenner and the bathroom.
John, can we say, when you say it's a lot of hype, I mean, it's in his administration that the first openly gay elected official in Massachusetts, in California, who was murdered and was a Navy veteran's name is being taken off a ship. I mean, think about who he's kicking out of the military. And you know, this notion, you say what happened at Mar-a-Lago. Do you know what also happens at Mar-a-Lago? He hires undocumented people and doesn't deport them. So I happen to agree with you. I think the reality is, as Marjorie said, he's doing all this anti-LGBTQ stuff for political reasons.
He doesn't give a damn about abortion either. He was pro-choice for most of those years, as you probably know as well, John, and now he's not.
By the way, we're looking at one of our colleagues, we can't put this up in the moment, 2016, Trump holding up LGBT for Trump, we
interviewed him about this in New Hampshire.
John, thank you for your call.
We asked about Sue
O'Connell asked him,
Excuse me, it was Sue O'Connell, not us.
In a hallway somewhere in New Hampshire.
And she's gay, and asked about how he felt about gay rights. And what did he say? You do your thing, I do mine, or whatever. Kind of a laissez-faire attitude. So it's a turn, and I think it's a turn because he realized he needed that evangelical vote to get elected.
Tobin, you're in Sandwich. You're on Boston Public Radio. Hey, Tobin.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. Long-time listener. And happy anniversary to me. My husband and I got married 21 years ago today.
Happy anniversary.
Congratulations.
Today. Happy anniversary to you guys. Yeah.
Thank you. I also, just the last caller, Trump enables a lot of people to be anti-gay and to make a lot of inroads into being anti-gay. So Trump may himself be one way, but he certainly enables a lot of other people. But just one quick story. I grew up on an Iowa farm. My dad was a farmer. Every morning he would go into the grain elevator for coffee with about 15 other farmers. 3 days after Obergefell, I called him and said, Dad, what are all the farmers in town talking about today about the gay marriage thing? And I knew most of these guys because I grew up with them. Mm-hmm. And my dad hesitated a little bit, and he goes, well, we all realized we had one. Yeah, me, his son, another guy had an aunt.
We had one.
Another guy had a nephew. And, that was his way of saying, and, I just thought that was a microcosm for how things changed.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
Tobin, that is a great story. And what about all those maiden aunts? What were they doing? That was always the question, growing up.
Tobin, happy anniversary. Really glad you called, particularly today. Thanks so much. 877-301-8970 is the number. By the way, I looked up this morning. There have been in the neighborhood of 600,000 same-sex marriages in the United States since Obergefell. You want to hear also, we've had Margaret Marshall on, the former Chief Justice of the SJC, who wrote the decision that legalized same-sex marriage in Massachusetts. And her humility around this, which I think is totally real, I think you feel the same way, is stunning. Listen to a little snippet of what Chief Justice Marshall told us when she was on with us in 2024 about the day of that her decision.
What I remember of that day, I knew it would be a big deal in Massachusetts. I knew it would be a big deal, maybe in, a one-day story. Really. A one-day.
By the way, she's one of the smartest people we've ever met. I think she says, I knew it'd be a big deal in Massachusetts, maybe a one-day story.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
A lot of people are making the same jokes. One of the texters says it was originally Robin Williams, the late Robin Williams, who said this. But in any case, all marriages are the same sex. Over and over and over.
Thank you. Let's go to Rodrigo in...
that was a pretty good one.
That's a good one. In D.C. Welcome, Rodrigo. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks, Mike, for taking my call.
Of course.
Long-time listener, and I call every now and again. Anyways, I just wanted to say I was in San Francisco at the time. I was a college student, and I was super happy and thrilled. I have yet to get married, though. But I do have a lot of concerns these days. I think the root of my concern is how virtually all of our civil rights progress since the Civil Rights Act of 1964 have been through the courts rather than legislative, which when you compare that to other countries, be it Ireland that was able to legalize abortion through referendum, be it Argentina that had a congressional vote, Colombia, the legislature legalized gay equality, like none of those things have happened in our country. And the current Supreme Court has shown that it's more than willing to use its conservative power to roll back those cases. And then I can't help but see the parallels right now, at least, while not perfect, but between our political moment and the one in Weimar Germany, where Weimar Germany also, 100 years ago, had the most progressive gay rights or gay life in Germany up until that point. And then we all know what followed that. So it seems to me like we're just seeing an incredibly strong reaction against the progressive moment that we were all living in and incredibly happy about.
It's funny, Rodrigo, in the middle of I was about to interrupt you and say, I don't agree with you. And as I'm listening to you longer, and I thought as you're speaking about how much has happened that is turning back progress and tolerance and decency and equity in just the last 5 months. Sadly, you may be onto something. I hope you're not, but thanks for sharing.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead.
And just one last thing. It's incredible. Even when the Democrats were in power, they were unable to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. Like the fact that even legislatively we don't have something that says that women are equal to men in this country is just incredible.
Well, they passed it. The issue is the 38th state that was needed. There's a debate as to whether or not it came too late or didn't come too late, and the archivist could have made it part of the Constitution and then been challenged, and she chose not to. But Rodrigo, thank you. Your big point about the courts versus legislatures is a really, really important one. Thanks for making it.
Think about when the courts first made their decisions on civil rights stuff back in the 60s. I don't think the country was with the courts.
Well, Loving versus Virginia actually was also a interracial marriage. And remember, the country was not in support of that at the time.
And remember, President Johnson talked about how he was going to lose the South South after he pushed all these civil rights laws, and he was right. I mean, he was from Texas himself and grew up with a lot of black families, and I think he had an insight that maybe other people didn't, but he did lose the South.
Do you have we get the so-called, flooding the zone thing, Steve Bannon's line, which is the experience with Trump every day. You almost never have time to step back and relax. Did you not think, for example, after Obergefell, just as one example, this is where we are forever, and we'll continue to make progress, and 40% will become 60% approval and 70% approval until it becomes a non-issue. Did you ever dream that these kinds of things would happen from an elected president of the United States?
You mean
the reversal of so much?
No, and I think, again, like I was saying, we talked to Chuck Todd a little bit later in the show about this, but I think young people, you look at your children, I look at my children, or you look at people in their 20s and 30s, this is such a non-issue. You have, it would have been shocking, like for the baby boomers to go to college and have a gay roommate. Well, kids have gay roommates, they don't think anything of it. This is okay.
Well, you know what
deal.
that reminds us of, as we tell the story all the time, is when David Hogg was with us and we're talking about, are we ever going to get serious gun legislation? And David Hogg said to us, as soon as you people are dead. And he didn't just mean the two of us, he meant our generation, and he's probably right.
Okay, we were talking about the 10th year anniversary of the Supreme Court decision that made gay marriage the law of the land all across the United States of America. More of your calls and texts are next. We come back from a quick break. Numbers 877-301-8970. The majority of Americans think gay marriage is a great idea. Where are you? What's your experience being? 877-301-8970. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, the city of Boston's new poet laureate. Emmanuel Opong-Yeboah is an English teacher turned school librarian who has a plan for popularizing poetry. It starts with elevating the youth poetry scene, tapping into local libraries, and hosting poetry slams for all ages. Opong-Yeboah joins me to talk about their path to poetry and how they'll pave the way for future poets. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Dean and Hamilton with Compass Real Estate. Their website includes listings of homes from Hingham to Duxbury, as well as information about each South Shore community. More about the team and current listings at deanandhamilton.com. And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts. BSU's skilled graduates are recruited by today's industry leaders, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browder. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. By the way, if people are wondering, at noon we'll talk to Chuck Todd about maybe the most disturbing press conference I've ever seen, the Secretary of Defense this morning, about what happened in Iran. If you're just tuning in, though, now we're talking about the 10th anniversary of the Obergefell decision legalizing same-sex marriage across the country. 10th anniversary today. Want your reflections on where we are 10 years later, what you recall from that day at 877-301-8970.
I think it's important to remember, too, we're in Massachusetts, where we're much more accepting. You hear stories all around the country, in other parts of the country, that things are not nearly so great as they are around here.
I agree with that, and I'm not in any way belittling your comparison, but 69% of the people in this country support same-sex marriage. Another thing I would not have predicted 10 years ago.
Well, we also said before that one of the big things that helped gay marriage was that most people knew somebody who was gay, and their family or close friend. I think that's one of the problems with the trans issue.
We had that discussion
very
the other day,
few people know someone who is trans, and we had Alejandra Carballo on the other day. She's an attorney, a trans attorney, and you talk to her for 2 seconds and you think, why should not this person have every single solitary right?
Well, both
else?
Alejandra and the woman who said of Fenway Health were on said, in response to your point, that once people do know a trans person at work, their neighbor, whatever, that'll change too. But it's a painful way to get there.
Well, there are so far fewer, obviously.
Exactly. Let's go to Jim in Boston. Jim, welcome. Hi.
Hi there.
Hi.
Went to a same-sex marriage Friday night. It was beautiful. Beautiful. They were afraid that their rights would be taken away by the Trump administration. So I told them, well, you can't really do that. But they got real nervous and went ahead with it fairly quickly. And they're very happy. It was a beautiful wedding with the two ladies. Actually, Vermin Supreme was there, gave a great speech.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
We know him from
He's
New
a real
Hampshire.
character.
Yes, we do. Go ahead.
So they're very happy, and I couldn't have had a better time. So, people are doing it, and it makes them feel a lot more stable.
Yeah.
And that they can't, maybe if they're married, they can't take it away. But, if they weren't married, maybe they could take that right away. So let's hope that that nut in the White House doesn't, try to take these basic liberties away from us. So,
Jim, that's
well put, Jim. Well, in the words of Obergefell, we mentioned a few minutes ago on NPR this morning, we wanted to exist. I mean, how beautiful is that?
Remember all the rights that marriage gives you, like your pension, or sharing your pension, sharing your Social Security.
Visiting your partner in the hospital.
Yeah, all these things, were not possible before. Somebody just texted and said that if a sister-in-law who waited till her parents had died, till she could marry her now wife because of their religious beliefs. And I always love to point out that people point to the Bible. They talk about Leviticus, talked about how homosexuality is a terrible thing, but they never say that Leviticus said that if you don't observe the Sabbath, you should be stoned to death. So that means, I guess we should go over to the mall there and drag everybody out and stone them who's shopping instead of in church on Sundays, or if you ate shellfish. All these things. I mean, all these things were abominations in his view. So I'm not sure that he's the most reliable person. And the New Testament only mentions it once, and it's in St. Paul, who was not exactly a liberal on a lot of social issues.
That was very impressive, I should say.
Well, I think, it was.
Jim, I didn't mean that sarcastically.
I probably wrote 275 stories about that.
I read probably about 270 of them.
Yeah, maybe you did.
David in Mansfield, hi.
Hi. Just for background, I have a trans daughter.
Yep.
Came out to us 2 years ago, who we love and support. But about 10 years ago, shortly before my mother died at 94, we were going through old family photos, and I kept seeing this person dressed in men's suits, in military uniforms, and I said, who is that? Is that a family member? And my mother said, oh, yeah, that's Aunt Fan. She used to like to dress in men's clothes and in military uniforms. And then I was thinking back, she was married to this is actually my great-aunt Fan, my great-uncle Walter, who, thinking back, was kind of effeminate, and they were probably both gay, and that's what gay marriage was.
That's right.
Early, in the 1900s, you'd marry someone just so you could have a life and cover for yourself.
I tell you, that is another spectacular story, David. That is one hell of a story.
I think that's so true. It's like you're saying, the maiden lady aunts, or, there were a lot of them, school teachers that were living together.
Were you two maiden aunts who weren't really your aunts? Were
they
were
sisters. They were sisters.
Oh, they were sisters.
They were single because in the law in those days, you couldn't get married or you lose your job as a school teacher.
But that was in Massachusetts.
Yes.
That wasn't that long ago, was it?
Well, they'd be like
No. I know they were, but that law wasn't changed that long ago. Was it like 30 years ago?
Mary Fonseca, the state senator from my hometown of Fall River, made it easier for people to get married and have babies when they were teachers without losing their job. Yeah.
Hey, Kate in Cambridge, you got a minute. It's all yours. Take it away. Hi.
Hi. When you have an oligarch situation, and when you have you've got to pretend you're righteous, so you have the evangelicals, and you've got to divide and conquer, and you keep taking rights away from this group. You start with the extremes, and like the ones that are least able to, with the smallest amount of people, and then you just keep moving it in, and before you know it, it's affecting all of us. And so you got righteousness, You've got, with they keep saying the evangelical. I don't know any Christian that thinks that God is making people that have something wrong with them, thousands and thousands and thousands of people that he would have excluded. I don't think so. That's my take on it. Is
Good
that,
take.
Thanks.
We got it.
Bye-bye.
No, that was good.
No,
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. That was a very good call. Okay, we are basically out of time here, but we wanted to celebrate this day because
10th anniversary.
I know. Can you
And
believe
20
it?
plus
20
anniversary in Massachusetts.
Boy, I tell you, we're really old, Jim.
Well,
Coming
speak
after
for
this.
yourself.
Coming after this quick break, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral joins us. We're going to talk to her about why these ICE agents can get away pulling people off the street when they've got masks on their faces, no badges, no IDs in many cases, and that seems to be fine. And we're also going to talk to you about a Supreme Court decision that allows people to be deported to countries they didn't come from, like South Sudan. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Be right back after this quick break.
Part of Kazakhstan, a pair of underground mosques has become a destination for Kazakh Muslims on pilgrimages. It's part of a larger effort to reconnect with religious life, which was suppressed during Kazakhstan's Soviet past. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And New England Botanic Garden at Tower Hill, a garden destination 50 miles from Boston. Visitors can discover summer with thousands of blooms, twilight experiences, art exhibitions, and educational programs for all ages. NEBG.org. And the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum with Ming Fei, Edge of the Garden, a profound and playful exhibition filled with sculptures of oversized fruits and hybrid plants, opening June 26th. More at gardnermuseum.org.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow with some fabulous music and other stuff. Joined now on Zoom by Andrea Cabral. Andrea is the former sheriff of Suffolk County, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety. She joins us weekly. Hey, Andrea.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
We're good.
We're okay, all considering. So, Andrea, we talked a lot earlier in this week about the Supreme Court decision, which allowed persons in this country without being citizens, without having the documents, to be deported, not just to the countries they came from, but basically to anywhere, like South Sudan. And we wondered what you thought this means about the direction of the court. It was a shocking decision, I think, to lots of us.
Well, it's the latest in what seems to be an unending series of shocking decisions where, people need to keep in mind that the Supreme Court is supposed to be the court of last resort. The reason that there are district courts at the first level and appellate courts at the second level is that they are there to hear the merits of federal cases, to sort out the facts and the law, and to keep nothing but the most important cases going up to the Supreme Court. That's exactly how they have been functioning. And in case after case, since this extremist majority has taken hold, the Trump administration has sought, both in its first incarnation and now in its second incarnation, has gone to this Supreme Court simply to overturn the decisions of lower courts, the district court and the appellate court. It's not supposed to be the, hey, I know a guy court when you lose, right? It's the court of last resort. And what the three I would suggest, I won't call them the liberal justices, they are the Democratic justices, they are pro-democracy justices, have had to resort to time and time again, is publishing dissents in cases where, like the one that you're talking about, this was an unsigned opinion because the Trump administration was asking for them to intervene as an emergency measure, where the lower courts had said you cannot deport people without due process. All people residing in this country, not just citizens, are entitled to due process. Congress established the process by which they get this due process. You cannot circumvent it and then violate a court order by simply flying them out of the country when a judge has told you can't do that. Ask them to intervene. They did it in circumstances where what would have been the harm of deferring to the lower court justices who heard the facts and said that this was wrong and unconstitutional? No harm would have come. The three justices who are pro-democracy had to resort to publishing what I suggest is a rightfully scathing dissent, pointing out that the government made no case for why it had the right to deport these people to begin with, when they hadn't followed the procedure that Congress, a separate and co-equal branch of government, had established. And here you have virtually nothing these justices can do except say, we'll at least let the public know what this majority is doing every single day in the name of the United States of America, that is literally violating the Constitution.
Well,
no accountability.
This is one of these areas where I would have been dead wrong if you had said to me the day before the decision, what is the likelihood that they're going to rule like they did? And I'm not a fan of this court. I would say this one is a bridge too far even for them. And I was wrong, which makes me very nervous about what's going to happen the next few days. And for those who are not paying attention to Supreme Court stuff, while there's nothing like a Dobbs-like case or an affirmative action case quite of that magnitude other than birthright citizenship, and we're not even sure if they're going to go to the merits of that in the tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday when their term ends, they do have some important things yet to go, and we'll tell you about them. Hey, can we
just one last thing about this. I just want to point out that the Supreme Court said it was okay even to be deported to countries where there was a high likelihood you could be tortured.
Well, can I just say, here's the weak sauce the government responded. This was the justification for saying, yeah, well, maybe the country's going to torture people that we send them back to. They said, as long as that country, it should be sufficient for us to circumvent the Constitution and Congress, as long as that country gives us assurances that this person will not be tortured. As the dissent points out, that is absolutely, it is insane for a majority of the Supreme Court to take that as a justification for denying constitutional due process in this country.
We're talking to Andrea Cabral. Can we stay on immigration-related things for a minute? I read a piece in the Globe, I don't know, about a week ago, which I hoped was going to answer a question that I've had, and I assume a lot of listeners have had too. And this is not the Globe's fault. It appears there's a difference of opinion. You're the former Secretary of Public Safety. Why are ICE agents allowed not to identify themselves to wear masks? And a corollary question, since so many of them don't identify themselves or wear masks, if someone like Rumeysa Ozturk or any of us were nabbed by one of these people and we fought back and we did grave physical harm to that person, as I would like to do if I thought somebody was kidnapping me or robbing me, would I be in trouble, or would it be seen as a reasonable defense considering I thought I was being attacked? So if you can answer any of those things, including why are masks and no badges allowed?
Well, to answer the first question first, the reason that they are allowed to wear masks is because Congress, which is supposed to be a separate and co-equal branch of government and is supposed to provide oversight over executive branch departments like Homeland Security and like ICE, has utterly failed to hold them to account. Had this happened in the Obama administration, had ICE agents suddenly gone out onto the streets masked, unidentifiable, disappearing people off the streets, there would have been hearings in Congress and sanctions being issued so fast it would have made people's heads spin. This is because the GOP in Congress has abdicated all authority and responsibility to the executive branch, and somehow Democrats and others have forgotten how to do recall elections, how to have petitions signed that recall these Congress people who are violating their oath on a daily basis. There's the reason why they're not providing oversight is because they can show fealty to the Trump administration and no one is holding them to account. No one is demanding that recall elections be held in their districts where they can be pushed out of office, because this is essentially taxation without representation, or it's fascism, or it's anti-democratic or unconstitutional. We could be doing these things. We could be recalling these Congress people who have ceded their power to the executive branch, but we're not doing it. So the short answer is the reason they're doing it is because they're being encouraged and allowed to get away with it by Congress, who would traditionally provide oversight. The other part of this, to your question, is yes. If I were approached by any one of these masked people who sought to take me off the street and appeared to be heavily armed, wasn't showing a badge, I couldn't see their face, and I fought back, I would absolutely believe that I had the right to make the defense, that I had no idea who this person was, that they didn't identify themselves, and I was defending myself. The fact that the people who would be able to make this argument are being whisked out of the country to parts unknown is part of the reason why we're not hearing those defenses. Because they're not only doing it, they're making sure that the people who they're victimizing have no capacity to defend themselves publicly. They're not even in the country.
Andrea, one of the arguments, you know this, I don't know if listeners do, one of the arguments that defenders of this masked no ID thing make is because of doxing, they say is a real problem, which is in doxing conceptually is a real problem when people disclose identifying information, your address, your whatever, for malicious intent. One, there's no evidence, as far as I know, that ICE agents have been doxed. But there are other law enforcement people, including some used to be in charge of
cops.
If there was any evidence that there was doxing of state troopers, they couldn't all of a sudden cover their faces and take their IDs off, could they?
Right, and it goes to the point that I was just making, that in any other incarnation of this democracy, if that was the reasoning offered for masking and therefore concealing the identity and eliminating all accountability for law enforcement, if that was the reason that was given, they'd be laughed out of court. They'd be laughed out of Congress. Congress would have swept in and held them to account. They're doing it because they can, because no one is pushing back on it. There's no evidence that any of them have been doxxed. If anything, the law enforcement people, Capitol Police and others, were doxxed by Trump supporters when they went after when they came to Congress to testify that they'd been victimized by Trump supporters. But the bottom line is, the reason that you have to have your badge conspicuously displayed, that your face has to be able to be recognized, is precisely because regular people against whom the power of law enforcement is considerable have to have some mechanism for knowing who it is that is bringing them under the heel of law enforcement, however legitimately or especially illegitimately, and has to be able to defend that. That is one of the essences of democracy. This is why I keep saying that we don't have three separate and co-equal branches of government. Fascism is here. That's what this is.
Yeah, some of these guys show up with hoodies on, which makes them even scarier looking. And Ramesa Osterk, she said that she thought she was being kidnapped. She didn't know who these people were. And can you imagine your fear? You're getting dragged off into a car by four guys and you don't know who they are?
Imagine yourself, for those who are saying, hey, then you get what you deserve, which is the attitude of a lot of people who support this deportation, this incarceration stuff for anybody who doesn't look like them. Can you imagine if you were in that circumstance and you're walking down the damn street and you're confronted by people like Osterk was?
The father of the three Marines that was afraid, and
the guy in California,
and they ran after him and threw him to the ground and handcuffed him. And
what are the crimes he's committed, by the way? None.
Coming
None.
into the country.
No, I mean, the violent crimes that allegedly were the only basis that Trump is going to use to deport people.
These are brown shirts. These are the kinds of crimes that we read about, that kids are taught about in history class, that were committed by brown shirts or committed by Mussolini's forces during fascism. That is what this is. It's happening every day. It's happening in broad daylight under a mandate to deport 3,000 immigrants, undocumented immigrants, daily, which in and of itself, that particular mandate in and of itself is unconstitutional, I would suggest.
I've said this before, from the political perspective, wouldn't it have been politically much better for Trump if he shut down the border, which, to his credit, he effectively has shut it down.
Which Biden had done effectively before he took office.
And then never gone this route. It seemed that the thing that voters were upset about was this craziness at the border, this sense of unrule and who's coming over.
The majority of people are getting off on this cruelty. We talked about the polling. The only policy of Trump's that has small majority support is the cruelest policy. They get off on this. They like treating people like crap.
I beg to differ. I think the more people that realize that a father Marine was treated like this, or that people are dragged off the street for the crime of coming over the country and detained for 4 months, his poll numbers in immigration are going down, and not significantly as like on the economy, but they are going down. I don't think most people thought this is what was going to happen.
I would agree with that. You know, in a related note, unlike the doxing, where there's no evidence of it vis-a-vis the ICE agents, there is evidence that violence against public officials, you being a former one in a couple of elected capacities, is on the increase. The most recent egregious was obviously the murder of that legislator and her husband, and the shooting of another legislator and his wife out there in Minnesota. In response to that, I don't know how seriously it's being considered, but it's being considered by someone, Beacon Hill, is that the addresses of candidates and incumbents who are running for office would be taken off ballots, which they're currently on. I read a story in the Globe. I don't know if you know this or if it's true, because the sentence wasn't written as clearly as I would have liked. It seemed to be saying we're the only state out of 50 that has, that you're nodding in agreement, that does put addresses. Because my original position was we shouldn't change it. But if every other state is determined to go in another direction, is that true, that we're the only state that lists addresses?
I believe it is. I mean, I'm basing it on what I've read as well.
Okay.
It's not like I've done any sort of independent research on it. But I believe that we are the only state.
So what should we do if that's
there is no reason to put home in 2025. There is actually lots of reasons for not putting a home address on a ballot. It's not that, I mean, of course, you could probably find out where any elected official lives, fairly easily, because most elected officials are voters themselves and they're on the voter rolls. But for something like this, it's not necessary for people to know the exact address. As long as the requirement that a person live in their district is independently verified and satisfied, to the extent that that's a requirement for representing that district, and that's not apparently not all the case in every single state. As long as that eligibility requirement has been satisfied, there's no reason to keep it on a ballot and make it as easy as possible for someone to track someone down. Because where we are in this country is that people with whom other people disagree politically are at risk for violence, up to and including death, being murdered. And we're sort of at a loss at this point to do much about that. Doesn't mean we need to make it easier.
So that's pending on Beacon Hill. And again, I don't know what the status of it is, but I tend to think, for reasons that you said, plus the fact that we're the outlier, that it should probably happen. Can we do one more outrage? I know there's some people say,
why not?
What's the point? This, I try to, I don't know if it's subliminally is the right word. I try to sort of rate the outrages. What's happened to this Kilmar Abrego Garcia starting with the administrative error with his deportation being put in the El Salvador prison. And then because when the Trump administration's own lawyer said it was administrative error, but obviously that didn't work. So they had to say he was a horrible gang member, criminal, that sort of thing.
And the lawyer lost his job.
He did, yeah. The Supreme Court of the United States.
He's now a whistleblower.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yes. That's the whistleblower that came forward and said that Emil Bove, who Trump is now nominating to be on the District Court of U.S. District Court of Appeals for Delaware, Pennsylvania, and I forget what the number of the circuit is. It's Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. Emil Bove is his personal attorney, represented him in the hush money case, represented him on other cases brought against him by the Justice Department. Trump gets elected, puts Bove into the Justice Department as a high-ranking official, and has now nominated him to be on the U.S. District Court of Appeals. The guy who told the truth and said that it was an administrative error to deport Abrego Garcia is now the whistleblower saying that Bove was in a meeting that this whistleblower was in and said basically it was going to be necessary for the Justice Department or the Trump administration through the Justice Department to tell the courts to F off when they issue these orders stopping these deportations. Yeah. That's the exact same attorney that did that.
Well, by comparison, I was just going to say that the latest in the Abrego Garcia thing, we only have a minute left or so here, is the latest thing is when they finally agreed to bring him back, because the Supreme Court said they had to facilitate his return. They said they weren't going to do it, so quietly they did it. You got to say he's the worst criminal of all time. So they accuse him of human trafficking, which is not really what they're trying to say. He may be a human smuggler, which is not something I'd embrace, but there's no evidence of that yet either. Pam Bondi stands up and talks about, this is the Attorney General, says, trading the innocence of minor children for profit, abusing undocumented alien females, which, by the way, are really serious charges, except there's zero evidence. And a judge says this is fourth-class hearsay. It couldn't be used in court, and there's no evidence. This is the Attorney General of the United States. Why did you tell me, forget the commenting on the law, just satisfy me, why isn't every single person who's not related to or working for Donald Trump upset by the chief law officer saying those kinds of things and having a judge say, you made those up?
Because they're not. Because ordinarily, there would be checks and balances. There would be people coming forward, within an administration who wouldn't stand for this outrage.
Yes.
That's why they established the loyalty test when they first came into office.
Right.
They purged all of those people.
You're right.
That's exactly what it is. And since Congress won't do anything about it, and when cases get to the Supreme Court, they will enable it. There is nothing that's going on right now in this country that is effective to beat back this fascist wave, and that is why democracy is dying or in its death throes.
Let me tell you, despite what everybody says, you're really a fun person, Andrea.
Yeah,
you really are.
I get invited to a lot of parties.
I bet you do. You're really fun. Andrea, we'll talk to you next week. Andrea Cabral, thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you, Andrea. We've been speaking with former Suffolk County Sheriff Andrea Cabral, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety as well. The show continues here in Boston. For you listening to NEPM, thanks so much for tuning in. You can tune in as well to the fabulous 413 starting at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Monty and Khalif speak with Congressman Jim McGovern. BPR continues on GBH 89.7 after the noon news. We'll talk with political analyst Chuck Todd, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, and the third anniversary of the decision outlawing Roe v. Wade, and a panel on supporting first-time mothers through cash payments. I am Marjorie Egan. He is Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be right back after the noon news with Chuck Todd.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio, right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, insurance coverage from healthcare experts for businesses, individuals, families, and retirees. Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Learn more at mgbhp.org/everyday. An organic farmer in Maine sets out to transform the prison food system and help incarcerated men grow their own food. Don't miss Seeds of Change, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of BPR. Political analyst Chuck Todd joins for his take on the explosive press conference this morning from the Pentagon with Secretary of Defense Hegseth credible. How about his wild Trump-like attacks on the media? Plus, we'll get Chuck's thoughts on what the New York mayoral primary says about the Democratic Party.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then the Family Health Project started delivering direct cash payments to first-time mothers a few years ago. Now they're scaling it up after success lifting children out of poverty. Jo Knowles of the Family Health Project joins with first-time mother Dahlia, who's benefited from the program herself. All that plus our Two More Things segment next on the second hour of BPR, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The Supreme Court has cleared the way for South Carolina to exclude Planned Parenthood from its state Medicaid program. The ruling allows the state to cut off Medicaid funding to clinics that provide abortion services, even if funds are used for other care like cancer screenings or birth control. Advocacy groups argue the state has the right to determine which providers qualify for Medicaid funding. The Pentagon released its assessment of the U.S. airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities last weekend. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the attacks caused massive damage. NPR's Quill Lawrence reports Hegseth also attacked the media for suggesting otherwise.
The Secretary of Defense repeatedly praised President Trump's leadership in deciding to attack Iran's nuclear sites last weekend. He attacked the press for reporting on leaked preliminary intelligence assessments that cast doubt on whether Iran's nuclear program has been destroyed. Hegseth cited other Trump administration sources, as well as the international community, to assert that the mission succeeded. He said he was not aware of any intelligence that Iran might have moved some of its stockpile of nuclear fuel. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, gave a lengthy presentation, including videos of the bombs, and describing the years of planning and hours of nonstop flight by U.S. servicemen and women. But he said a full assessment of the strike was still pending. Quill Lawrence, NPR News.
The Senate parliamentarian has rejected key Medicaid provisions and a massive spending bill that's currently before the upper chamber. NPR's Claudia Grisalis reports it was a key part of the measure designed to help offset the costs of the legislation's tax cuts.
It's a pretty big blow when it comes to cost savings and their timeline. We already know Senate Majority Leader John Thune can only afford to lose 3 members of his conference to get this passed in the chamber. And plenty more are opposed when we add these Medicaid changes.
That's NPR's Claudia Grisalis reporting. The U.S. economy shrank more in the first 3 months of the year than had been previously reported. NPR's Scott Horsley reports on the updated figures released today by the Commerce Department.
Revised figures from the Commerce Department show the U.S. economy shrank at an annual rate of 0.5% in January, February, and March. That's a slightly bigger drop in first quarter GDP than had been reported. Much of the downgrade reflects lower consumer spending. The nation's trade gap widened last month after narrowing in April when President Trump announced his worldwide tariffs. Exports and imports were both down in May, but exports dropped more. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, the Dow is up 297 points. This is NPR News in Washington.
And from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Judy Ewell. Nearly 200 public school students in Newton have to get up to date on their vaccinations if they want to attend public school in September. Superintendent of Schools Anna Nolan said in a letter to parents and the school committee that she learned during a review following an outbreak of chickenpox that 182 students are not vaccinated and 42 of them didn't get a measles shot. These Newton parents say they support having students immunized.
I think it's just become more political. And it really should just be between the pediatrician, the parents, right? But we should all stay healthy.
I could see some parents being objection to it, but I think, again, those who think it should absolutely happen versus those who shouldn't, there's a gulf there that needs to be bridged.
The state confirmed one case of measles linked to international travel earlier this month. The Celtics have taken Spanish forward Hugo Gonzalez with their first pick in this year's NBA draft. The C's selected Gonzalez with the 28th overall selection last night. The 19-year-old from Spain has already played professionally with the Real Madrid's basketball outfit. Celtics president of basketball operations, Brad Stevens, says there's a lot to admire about the young prospect.
This guy has been around at a high level, been coached really well. So he'll be... I think when you talk about years overall, yes, he's young, but years of basketball experience, of the things that, we will think are important, is probably pretty high.
That's Brad Stevens of the Celtics. It's overcast, 72 degrees in Boston.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive. Progressive Commercial Insurance protects small businesses from retailers to tradespeople. Progressive covers a variety of business needs with a range of coverages. More at progressivecommercial.com.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow for Live Music Friday, care of the Charles River Jazz Festival. This is going to be great. Plus, NPR's Eric Deggans for our Press Play segment, environmentalist Bill McKibben, and our media maven Sue O'Connell, fresh from the Karen Reed trial. We talked about that for at least 20 minutes, Jim. Hello.
Oh, hello. Oh, I didn't know there's a hello there. Hi to you, Marjorie.
Hi, Jim.
Up first this hour via Zoom is political analyst Chuck Todd. Chuck is the host of the Chuck Toddcast, which you can find at thechucktoddcast.com or youtube.com/@thechucktoddcast. Chuck's the former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, and now the host of the brand new show Sunday Night with Chuck Todd on the platform Newsphere and Sphere. Hello, Chuck Todd.
Oh, hello there, guys.
Hey.
Karen Reed trial. That was, how consuming was that to Boston, the second one?
Huge. Yeah. There were hundreds of people outside the courtroom, a lot of them in the pink shirts. There was a lot written about the town of Canton that you really shouldn't go out driving after 7 o'clock because everybody had been drinking too much at the local bars. It was. I would say it was a big deal. Would you not?
I've said this before. One of the key things the public knew, Chuck, was that Karen Reed allegedly had 9 drinks that night. And my daughter and I were in Canton a week ago, and we went to the last bar that she and Officer O'Keefe were at. And I ordered a margarita, and it was the size of the room in which you were sitting, I should say. So 9 drinks in Canton. Well, I don't know. I'm just saying they pour them big in Canton.
And she's a little bit of a thing. Jim is not a little bit of a thing.
I am not a little bit of a thing.
So, we loved it.
I think about this and how trials now, there's now regional obsessions, right? You had the South Carolina one, the Murtaugh trial.
Yes. Right? Saw a lot of that.
It seems like we have, what's the next scheduled trial? Do we have one yet? Has the
there's a Diddy.
People been alerted?
The jury's going to get the Diddy case, right? Today,
that's right.
Tomorrow,
Sean Diddy Combs.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's a big...
Diddy, that feels like that... Karen Reed was bigger than Diddy.
I would agree with it. I mean,
just how did that happen?
Because I think a lot of people have distrust in law enforcement in Massachusetts. I think that was a big part of it.
Interesting.
But anyway.
Well, and I guess because it involved a law enforcement.
That's right.
So
I think
that's right. And they did not do that well in prosecuting this case from law enforcement.
Whose loss of life was not mentioned nearly enough in the coverage of this locally.
No, it feels like it's become celebrified. It's the strangest thing sometimes when these trials become sort of cultural phenomenons. The actual victims get lost.
Yeah. And his family was harassed coming into the courtroom, yelled at. It was really
by some,
disgusting. By some. And let's hope it was a tiny minority. But anyway, this is one of those mornings, Chuck, when I couldn't get to work on time because I turned on Pete Hegseth talking about the strike on Iran, and I was so kind of shocked and stunned. I couldn't even move. We're going to start with a little sound. Here is Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. This was this morning, ending his opening remarks at a Pentagon press staffing by lashing out at reporters, accusing them of bias against President Donald Trump.
Because you, and I mean specifically you, the press, specifically you, the press corps, because you cheer against Trump so hard, it's like in your DNA and in your blood to cheer against Trump, because you want him not to be successful so bad, you have to cheer against the efficacy of these strikes. You have to hope maybe they weren't effective.
Sick man.
Maybe the way the Trump administration has represented him isn't true. So let's take half-truths, spun information, leaked information, and then spin it in every way we can to try to cause doubt and manipulate the public mind over whether or not our brave pilots were successful.
This went on for quite some time. I wonder what you make of it.
I mean, it's Shakespeare wrote the line, "Methinks you doth protest too much."
Yeah.
And this has been the behavior of this administration. But look, when you're an administration built on BS, right, and this is the Donald Trump way, right? And he admits he exaggerates. He admits, my gosh, even this week, he said, well, maybe I shouldn't have said obliterated. Maybe I picked the wrong word, And then, of course, he said, oh, no, what am I talking about? Then a Truth Social post came out. I mean, unfortunately, when you build an entire political movement on half-truths, to quote Pete Hegseth, on half-truths and misleading information, and that you're so convinced everybody's out to get you that you think everybody's out to get you, right? Like, that's what I want to tell Pete Hegseth. Wow, can I hold up a mirror? I mean, you do. You strike me as somebody who spends probably too much time in front of a mirror. But everything he said applies to his paranoia. The entire Trump movement is built on this manufactured belief that everybody's against them. So why else? Of course they're going to come out and say everybody's against them, because they don't want to deal with the subject at hand. They've got two issues, right? By the way, why was he hesitating on bombing Iran in the first place? Because nobody could give him a guarantee these bombs were going to work.
Yeah.
And we gave them so much heads up, we can't find the actual enriched uranium. Nobody knows where that is. One of the most arrogant things about American leaders sometimes, and frankly, we all do this, is we assume because we're the number one country that other countries are somehow dumber than we are. And like Iran somehow didn't have a plan B on how to hey, are we going to move some of our stuff? Are we going to make sure that we preserve some of this, right? There's an assumption that somehow they just going to sit there and wait for the bombs to drop. So, this was a risky operation, not because our men and women were going to be put at harm's way. They were really not. It was risky because it's not clear this is going to work. And if this doesn't 100% work, all you're going to do is speed up Iran's demand to get a nuclear weapon. Because look, here's the hard truth that we all have to accept. If a country has a nuclear weapon, they suddenly have a new defense shield in front of them. How do we know this? Just ask North Korea, right? Or ask Libya or Syria, which did not end up getting a nuclear weapon, and they were and they did experience regime change. So, it's when you're coming out this hot, the way Hegseth is and the way Trump is, you're clearly worried about the truth. And that's the way I look at it.
Well,
it's sort
also,
of look, they attack us all the time. So it's like, this stuff is numbing to me. Like, I don't, oh, wow. Oh, you're flogging us again. Oh, let me cue the outrage. Should I get out? Please, these people have been full of, you can't put them on air and ask them questions because it's unlikely they're truthful anyway.
Exactly. And so how can an American trust anything they say? How can a foreign leader trust anything they say?
Can't.
I want to get back to the potential moving of the enriched uranium in a second, but I want to stay on Kavanaugh. I thought, and I know I'm hyperbolic.
You mean Hegseth? It's fascinating to me that you...
Kavanaugh.
Oh, that's what
Kavanaugh.
That's what I was going to compare it to.
It's a great Freudian slip,
Well,
Jim.
let me get...
I mean,
this is where I'm going.
Probably
two guys.
Two beers to you.
Exactly.
Who liked a cocktail.
Well, I was going to say, and one of the most disturbing performances I've ever seen by a
beer.
senior official. And, when Linda McMahon, head of education, doesn't know the difference between A1 sauce and AI, you say, oh, it's funny. What's the big deal? This guy is the Secretary of Defense. And what I did say to Marjorie when she walked in, it was like Brett Kavanaugh that day when he looked literally like he should be carried away in one of those suits when he's defending himself, practically crying, obviously performing for an audience of one, Donald Trump, as I think Hegseth may have done. But didn't you have that moment where you thought this is Brett Kavanaugh redux, and it's scary?
It is, especially because you're dealing when it's the Pentagon. There's something about the Pentagon lying that's like on another level. Like we've had a Pentagon lying to us during Vietnam. We've had a Pentagon lying us during weapons of mass destruction. So it is. I mean, what's really bizarre is, who's also acknowledged that we don't know the extent of the damage yet? The Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, and Director of Archives, Marco Rubio.
Mm-hmm.
Did I leave out a job? I think I might have. But it even in a brief moment of, well, I'm not sure, so did Donald Trump, right? So it is scary how insistent this administration is to use propaganda, and that's all you can call it. It's just full-on propaganda. And if this were, we'd make fun of this if this were Belarus, if this were North Korea, where we've seen this sort of tin pot dictator rhetoric before. But it's here, and it's insulting.
It's like Baghdad Bob.
You know what? Beyond the lying, to me, I thought of the ex-wife of Pete Hegseth, who talked about how she hid in a closet to get away from his rage. I talk about his own mother, who said he was an abuser of women before she decided to change her mind. I thought of how out of control and angry and scary he was, and I thought, I would not want to be in a room alone with this man. I'd be afraid that something very bad would happen. I found him a frightening, rageful guy.
Well, here's what he didn't do. I don't think he reassured anybody they're telling the truth.
Agreed.
Right? And I think that wasn't that the actual purpose?
I don't know.
Well, I think his purpose today was to ensure he doesn't lose his job. Trump obviously has to dump, in my opinion, somebody over this.
Don't you think he's mad because it came from DIA,
of
which
course.
is under?
Of course.
So he's gonna. So it's on Hegseth right now. But geez, I wonder why we didn't get any. Why all those congressional briefings kept getting canceled.
Exactly. Can we get back to your thing about the potential moving of enriched uranium, because the greatest negotiator in the history of the world tipped his hand a day or two in advance when he left the G7, etc. So basically giving the Iranians time to move this stuff. If you watch this press conference, and I would really urge people who were busy getting ready for work to watch the whole 45 minutes, including the Q&A. They, of course, never in their affirmative presentation, they, by the way, is the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane and Hegseth, they never addressed the issue of whether the enriched uranium was even there at that point. The third and fourth question were about it. And after Hegseth's answer to every question was endless, with attacks, with rhetoric, with Donald Trump's the greatest ever, historic. Their answers to those questions were incredibly brief and imprecise, meaning they either have no idea or they do know that they got a warning, and they did get away with whatever it is, 900 pounds of enriched uranium. Is that fair, do you think, for me to say?
And I also think, I'll take it one step further. A guy like General Kane has been there more than a couple of days, like Pete Hegseth, and he knows that these things have a way of not being what we think they are at the beginning of something, right? He was there when, what they swore, what they were told was there, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, turned out not to be anywhere. So, to me, Kane has really demonstrated, he's a reminder that he came up through the system, and he's being very cautious and careful with his words. He has been the whole time. the irresponsible so-called civilian leader of the Defense Department, Pete Hegseth, has just been. I mean, this guy. This is beyond disastrous. I mean, I can't think of a worse defense secretary that we've had, and I guess you would probably have to go back. You know, does McNamara get the worst because of the disastrous of the disaster that was sort of misleading the country about Vietnam? Although that was a policy mistake, right? Arguably, right? It wasn't necessarily military execution. This is a little bit of everything here.
You know, Chuck, we had Seth Moulton with us the other day, who obviously did 4 tours of duty in Iraq and knows what he's talking about, worked for Petraeus. You know a lot of these players here. And one of the things we asked Congressman Moulton was, and I think it was for reassurance for us, to be perfectly honest, in the whole human infrastructure around this, is there somebody you know who you say, thank God he or she is in the room because I know that person will speak their mind and can be trusted, or is there no such person?
I'm holding out. I think Kane is a responsible actor. I do.
I hope
he
so.
appeared pretty responsible. I should say, by the way, he was tempering his remarks, and the first question that was asked of Kane, Hegseth interrupted him midway today because he wasn't fierce.
Correct. He
and
wasn't
fiery
playing
enough.
politics.
Yeah,
he wasn't playing politics, and Kane was trying really hard not to play politics.
Couple of things.
It is. Look, what really bothers me, right, is what Donald Trump is trying to do, and this is what is so destructive to the republic. He's trying so hard to turn the military against the Democratic Party, to turn the military against the media, to turn the military against Americans, right? He is trying to partisanize the military. To the military's credit, they're trying so hard not to do it, right? The Army, you know, they went ahead and did the parade, but boy, did they not give Trump what he wanted, right? So Trump's already mad at Hegseth over that. You've got Kane, who's been, they're the embarrassment at Fort Bragg, you know, a couple weeks ago before the Army.
Selling the paraphernalia of the Trump swag.
It is. He's trying so hard, and with those, what Trump wanted this morning, Hegseth didn't deliver. He wanted the actual pilots themselves at the press conference behaving as if they were somehow aggrieved.
Well, that's
and of course they weren't there because that would have been absolutely just. I think I think uniformed military would realize that crossed the line.
Okay. 2 things about the military stuff. They created the straw man, this idea that everybody was trashing the military. Nobody, I heard, was just the opposite, talking about how incredible they flew 18 hours over, 18 hours back. They were refueled in air. That the incredible bravery. Turns out one of those pilots was a woman. And as we know, Hegseth
I thought he fired all the women.
Yeah.
That's a part of
exactly. So I wondered how many of them were women. And let's only hope
well, you know
there
what's
going to
happen. If they don't,
of color.
She's going to get blamed if they don't find
She's going to get blamed. That's right.
Hey, Chuck, I have one last policy question for you. If it turns out that, in fact, the enriched uranium, or a significant chunk of it, was taken elsewhere, and the primary reason for the original Israeli attacks was to help get to the obliteration point. And if we're pre-obliteration, what's to stop Israel from breaking out of the ceasefire and starting things all over again? Because none of their goals were
I don't think
achieved.
anything. Look, I believe, Netanyahu was going to do this regardless of who the American president was. I actually think that the only difference between Trump and versus Harris, as far as Bibi's calculation was concerned, was he gave Trump 60 days. I don't think he would have given Harris 60 days. But he was going to jam any American president with this decision. And doing what he did, by the way, I believe Kamala Harris would have done the same thing, would have okayed the bombing. Because you would have been told by your advisors you're never going to get a better opportunity.
Because of the Israeli assault.
Correct.
Right.
Because of what the Israelis did. This is the safest.
Yeah.
This is basically the cleanest shot. It's a relatively risk-free military operation because Israel has taken out their air defenses, right? And that was true, right? All of those things were true. So this was Bibi is petrified. Bibi wants regime change. Bibi also has political pressure from his far right. Remember, he launched the Iran war literally the day before a vote of no confidence that was coming on his government. His government was going to collapse by the furthest right coalition, who was mad that he was not, that he was not aggressive enough, if you will. So obviously he survives his vote of no confidence because of the launch of the war with Iran. Now, look, in their worldview, they believe this is an existential threat. And so their goal is always been different than the United States, right? They don't want an Iran deal at all because they fear any sanctions relief to Iran allows them to spend money to rebuild Hezbollah. And from Israel's point of view, I get that. I understand that fear. I throw all that backstory in there, Jim, to agree that if there is any evidence that they still have this enriched uranium hidden somewhere, and they're actually now trying to speed their way to a nuclear weapon faster now, sort of out of desperation, and I do believe they'll go after it and they'll strike.
We're talking to Chuck Todd.
Okay, before we leave this, I just want to point out, I would feel amiss if I did not, that Hegseth was talking about the boys, what a great job the boys did, and was only mentioned there.
Well, the Fox News reporter took him on about the thing, and she's the worst, as we learned.
Good for her.
So can we go to New York City?
Yes.
Zohran Mamdani, everybody knows the story now, even if they didn't hear of him the other day. What's your takeaway from his pretty significant first-round victory?
Well, I mean, it's you could look at it just tactically. Candidate A talks about the economy. Candidate B talks about Donald Trump. Can we see, right? I mean, just look at it from that point of view. Yeah. Candidate A is new to the system. Candidate B has been around since the 20th century, right? So I'm trying to pour cold water on the ideological aspect to this, right? Which is, I think that's being, look, the Republicans are going to weaponize his socialism like no tomorrow. And why will they do that? Because look what they successfully did in the state of Florida. They took the S word and they absolutely took a swing state and turned it into a red state because it scared the bejesus out of South Floridians, the S word, socialism. It is associated down there with authoritarian regimes. But in general, the word socialism is, while it has a net positive among voters under 30, which is an
big
interesting
deal.
Divide we have in America right now, where capitalism is not exactly seen as a net positive with younger people. I think that I question whether Mamdani is able to win if there is a credible candidate that's not named Cuomo as the alternative.
Do you think there will be a credible I mean, Eric Adams, as we all know, very unpopular, running in a debate. You don't think somebody's going to enter this race?
There is somebody on the ballot. Now, I don't think anybody else could get on the ballot.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Here. I'm not sure. I mean, there's, New York's weird fusion.
Well, all those parties and stuff, yeah.
Right. There's an independent guy, a former U.S. attorney, who's kind of a center-left guy who got on the ballot. I just don't think that goes anywhere. I mean, I think the energy Mamdani has now, look, it's going to create a fight. And I blame the New York Democratic Party establishment. I mean,
what do you mean?
What were Schumer and Jeffries thinking rallying around Cuomo? This was absolutely the most predictable disaster that we had coming. I wrote about this a couple weeks ago where I find that it's offensive. If you resign in disgrace, to me, if you resign to avoid an investigation, you should be constitutionally barred from seeking another office for a decade because you broke your contract with voters. You promised to serve 4 years. You instead resign early to avoid scrutiny. And now you want 2 years later, and that's really what it was. Literally within 2.5 years later, he's running for office without any explanation for his behavior, simply saying, well, I shouldn't have resigned. Well, I agree with that because I think we should have had that Letitia James report litigated. He should get his due process, but we should have a full investigation. And we didn't get that and the voters didn't get that. So of course there were a lot of people that couldn't stomach voting for him on just simple character grounds. And so what was Schumer, Bloomberg, Jeffries, what were they thinking? This was just, and you know what? Jeffries and Schumer are supposed to be leaders of the party right now, nationally. They can't even deal with their own backyard. Yeah. Jeffries, to me, still gets a chance. At this point, I don't know how I don't think Schumer has the ability to lead anymore. I don't think he has, look, he had a great run, but, he is now an easy punching bag for Democrats to say, hey, Washington's lost its way. And they use a picture of Schumer. There's this guy who announced for the U.S. Senate as a Democrat in Texas and said, yeah, the leaders in Washington of the party don't know what they're doing, like Chuck Schumer. Like, name checked him. He's going to become a real anvil. And I'm sorry, if you look, you're a national political leader, this is your backyard, and you rally around Cuomo, you've got a judgment problem, sir.
Chuck, I just want to say one thing before we go and get your response to it. I sense, and I could be wrong, but a real sea change about capitalism. Capitalism is not working in the United States anymore for people that are young, even people that are getting really good jobs. They can't afford a house. They can't afford childcare. They can't afford to have another kid. I think that the idea of this trickle-down economics has finally dawned on people as a bunch of baloney. And the rage I see, even among young people I know, my children's age, who have really good jobs, this idea of the American dream, we talked about this with an author a couple of weeks ago, it's out the window. It's become a joke. So if you're under 40 in the United States of America today, you are screwed by the system.
Well, this is where the Democratic Party, this is where you got to come up with ideas that have a chance. Free groceries is not something that has a chance. Free rent is not something that has a chance. But you know what does? Childcare and helping people live their life so they can earn a living, right? Like, and that to me is actually the sweet spot here, right? Which is you help people with their kids, you help people with their housing. You don't mess with the actual economic and the jobs environment, but if you do all this other stuff on the outside, that's how you give people the tools so they can have the opportunity to be flexible, maybe where they live, or to be flexible. And that's the focus. And, I go back, I think one of the biggest mistakes that Biden's and the Democrats made when they had power was not fighting for the child care tax credit as a permanent thing.
Yeah.
And I think not fighting for that was really, to me now in hindsight, really shows you that was a party that didn't understand its voters.
We're going to talk about that with our next guest. So before you go, talking about candidates who left in disgrace, we should not leave you without saying that Anthony Weiner lost his effort to be on the New York City Council.
Did he even finish second?
Same day. I don't know if he came in second, but he's not making it to
I'll
the
tell
final.
You, the disgraced list, actually. So Andy Cuomo, no. Anthony Weiner, out. Alan, do you remember Alan Grayson, that nutball, loudmouth in Florida, that congressman? He ran for a state Senate seat in the same one where the brother and sister were running against each other. I don't know if you saw that little thing. Anyway, Grayson finished like fourth in that. So it was a good day. Voters sniffed out the retreads and didn't let him come back. So for that, yay voters.
Okay.
Same voters elected Donald Trump. Hey, Chuck Todd, good to see you.
Yeah,
Talk
thank
to you soon. Really
so
appreciate
much.
it.
And
Thanks
really
so much.
enjoying the Toddcast.
Indeed.
Chuck. We've been speaking with political analyst Chuck Todd, host of the Chuck Toddcast, which if you're a political junkie, you would love it. If you're just a regular political interested person. He's the former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press and brand new host of a brand new show, Sunday Night with Chuck Todd. It's on the Newsphere platform, Chuck Todd, thank you very much for joining us. Coming up after this quick break, Joe Knowles leads the Family Health Project, an initiative that provides no-strings financial support for first-time mothers. He joins alongside one of the recipients of the support, first-time mother, Dahlia. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The weekend is coming with stories.
On my first gig, they came up and said, "Good job," and passed me a bucket. That's your tip, John. You want to get paid, right?
Gardening.
What you can do to encourage your plant is to give it a good deep soaking once a week if we don't have rain.
And DIY delights.
If it's not properly designed right, it's going to make this dunk sound. This really happens on really wide ductwork. That's where you get that buckling.
That's how we do weekends on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, helping families overcome the college planning stress. Committed to providing trusted guidance with calculators, step-by-step videos, and more. Details at mefa.org. And the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism, commemorating 250 years of history, independence, and innovation since the American Revolution. Learn more at Massachusetts250.org.
Welcome back to BPR. I'm Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, live at the library tomorrow. And this afternoon, in 30 minutes, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley will zoom in to talk to us. You know, we've talked a lot on the show through the years about universal basic income, and one project here in Greater Boston is attempting to do it, but for mothers. We're joined now in Studio 3 by Jo Knowles, CEO of the Family Health Project. It's an initiative that offers $400 a month, no strings attached, for the first 3 years to first-time mothers. Jo, it's good to see you again. Thanks for being back. Yeah. Along with us is one of the mothers enrolled in the program, Roxbury native Dahlia. She asked me not to use her last name. Is the mother of a 3-year-old, Gianni. Before we get started, let's say it's familyhealthproject.org. Did I get that right?
That's it.
Familyhealthproject.org. Dahlia, it's great to meet you. Welcome to you both.
Likewise.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for coming. So let's start with you, Jo. Elaborate on what Jim said. Tell us about this program.
Sure. Family Health Project is a direct cash benefit program for new moms, first-time moms living in poverty. We deliver $400 a month for 36 months on the day of the baby's birth by debit card with no obligations. Simple as that.
How does a first-time mother qualify for the program?
So we rely on federally qualified health centers, which exist across the country.
Like the League of Community Health Centers here. Michael Curry is on with us all the time.
Exactly.
His organization.
Those community health centers, and two in particular that we've started working with a few years ago. One is Lynn Community Health Center in Lynn, and the other is Whittier Street Health Center in Roxbury. Two of the best in the Commonwealth. And they refer moms directly into us. What's always been exasperating to me is for other guaranteed income programs to put up an ad or send out flyers asking for people to apply to programs, which makes no sense because for every person who is able to join a program, there are another 100 that can't, which is enormously exasperating.
Before we bring Dahlia into the conversation, what are the criteria they use for deciding that this person will be recommended?
A certain level of poverty, and what we discovered 4 years ago when we first started the pilot in Lynn, that we were having some of the most difficult cases referred into us, that this was a lifeline. So $400 a month doesn't sound like a whole lot of money to most of us, but to some of us, it's a whole lot of money.
So, Dahlia, tell us about your little boy, Gianna.
Well, he just turned 3. He does have autism, so he's like the son of my life. Literally.
Severe autism, or is he able to talk and do some certain things, or is he?
He's high functioning.
He's high functioning. That's good.
So he's like super smart, very vocal, very hyper. He's such a good kid, though. It's so amazing.
How'd you hear about the program?
I was referred by one of my caseworkers at Whittier Street Health Center, and she's like, I think this would be really good start for you, especially since, you're a single mom, first-time mom. It's going to be hard. You don't really have much support, so this would be a good support for you and your son.
What's the program meant for you and your kid, obviously?
It meant a good door opener for us. We were struggling, and this program actually helped us get to where we needed to go. It was like a stepping stone. We were able to do things that we weren't able to do before.
Like what, for example?
I actually got able to buy him the furniture that he needed for when he was a baby, like his crib, his stuff like that. I was able to take him to, like, the museums, buy him, like, little cotton candies here and there. Just basically, like, stuff that you would need done, like Pampers, wipes, that I wasn't able to get on my own. It helped get all that stuff situated.
I imagine, too, a lot of the worry was taken away. Because talk about that. To worry that you're not going to have enough money is very stressful.
Yeah, I was, super scared. Especially, this is my first time. I don't know nothing about being a mom. the income isn't flowing. We barely had any income to get by. So it was like, you know, my worries were, am I going to have enough to get him Pampers every month, or when he needs something, am I going to be able to get like my personal hygiene stuff? Like, am I going to be okay to provide for my kid, knowing that he's going to need a lot since he's this small?
Yeah.
You know, they need more than what they would need when they're a little older. So it's like, that was my biggest worry, making sure that everything was staying afloat and basically not drowning under financial issues.
And you mentioned you don't have a lot of support. I assume that means you don't have a lot of family around?
Yeah, so I have family, but it's more so like, you know, everyone's doing their own thing. So it's like, it was just me and my son at that moment. And with that support that I was getting from the Family Health Project and also Whittier Street, it made things a lot more easier, especially since I was doing it all on my own.
That's the voice of Dahlia, who's the mother of a 3-year-old, Gianni, who is the beneficiary of the Family Health Project, familyhealthproject.org, and the CEO of it, Joe Knowles, is with us, too. Broaden this beyond just Dahlia. The criticism of programs like this is, whether it's a first-time mother or a family, is as soon as they get the money, all they're going to do is go to the liquor store, go to the marijuana store, go to the racetrack.
Go to Encore.
All that's... no. Laughing.
Yeah,
These are the arguments.
that's the criticisms.
Jim, to that question, we've been asked that by otherwise well-educated people. It's really interesting, having gone back to school to get a master's in public health at Harvard School of Public Health, in part to research the basis of this program. It was really interesting to review the research. There is not one piece of research that says if you give someone money, a child benefit program, you demotivate them.
Yeah.
Or number two, that they will do what economists refer to, they will buy what economists refer to as temptation goods.
There's
a
great
term
line.
for it. In fact, cotton candy is as close as we've come to anything in the way of a temptation good. And by the way, what the heck is wrong with a mom buying a birthday cake for a 3-year-old's birthday?
So can we get back?
That's really what we're talking about.
You answered my unasked question first, which was the motivation thing. The other criticism is people who are lucky enough to get this aren't going to work. If they were working, they'll stop working. If they were looking for a job, they won't work. Is there anything to that or no?
None. In fact, as far as I can tell, and by the way, there's a wonderful slate of evidence that comes from all across the globe. It turns out, so when I first posited this to the CEO of Lynn Community Health Center at the time, Kiami Mahanya, wonderful guy, who said, it's really interesting. Of course, when I said, is it okay if I give 15 of your moms $400 a month for 3 years? He was like, how fast can you get here? So at the next thing he said was, it's really amazing you're saying $400 a month, Joe, because if Family Health Project is doing that, it is copying some of the great policy moves of European countries and Scandinavian countries who have, when he was in Germany and had his first son, he said the next week a check showed up for $400 from the government of Germany and kept coming every month for 5 years.
Well, let me just say, you don't have to go as far as Germany.
They must know something we don't know.
Well, we do know something here that is evidence to me. We talked ad nauseum about the child tax credit.
Yeah.
When the child tax credit happened during the Biden administration, from that alone, I think it was $3,600 a year or something like that per kid. Childhood poverty was reduced 40%, and as soon as this pathetic Congress let it expire, poverty rate for kids doubled.
Spikes back up.
So we have a perfect example. You want to tell you one
Hold on for 1 second.
Sorry.
I want to get back to the birthday cake for the kid.
Yeah.
You may recall about 10 years ago, there was a brouhaha of major proportions when a mom was at a farmer's market and was trying to buy a whoopie pie for her child with, she had food stamps or EBT card
or something. Or something.
Right. And you would have thought that, she'd robbed millions of dollars from the bank. I mean, don't you remember this case?
I remember it very well.
The whoopie pie case. So there are people out there who get outraged about a whoopie pie purchase at a farmer's market.
Boggles the mind.
Dahlia, one of the things I thought was really interesting when I was reading research, not just on this particular, the Family Health Project, but similar sorts of things, is it's not just the financial benefit and what it can buy, the things that you were describing you're able to buy for your kid a couple of seconds ago, but it also provides a stress relief and time, so that, for example, a lot of parents who are beneficiaries of this are able to read more to their kid. Their kid ends up doing better. Are there ancillary things, connected things that we might not think about that have improved in your life because of this $400 monthly check? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, like, I was able to, for my personal sake, have a, like, relief on my shoulders. Because I wasn't so worried as much as I was worrying before having my son, I was able to, like, be more aware and more there with him. Yeah. So I would say, like, mentally, it gave me more clarity on how to be a better mom, without having to worry about, hey, am I going to get this done? Hey, how am I going to figure out how to get this and stuff like that? So it was more so, I can be here. I'm present. I'm here for my son. He's here with me. I can, we're bouncing back off of each other.
And I realize Johnny's only 3, so obviously the school issue is a second. But what I said is true, is that the results I've read in general from these basic income things is kids do end up doing better in school and better in life.
They do. I mean, it's 0 to 3. All the great research into early child development has been done within 20 minutes of this studio. Most of it at Harvard, but some of it in Boston.
We got to put an end to that, as you know.
Oh my goodness! But it's already known. So what we know is that the ages infant 0 to 3 are critical.
Yeah.
It's when the brain develops. This is Jack Shonkoff. It's finding cortisol measurements, cortisol evidence in samples of infants who live in poverty. Yeah. Cortisol is a marker for post-traumatic stress. The idea that that is happening in America is an abomination. So a simple solution is what we were just talking about, and what Dahlia has just mentioned, which is a little bit of edge taken off. Just a little bit, with a little bit of money.
Well, the other thing, too, about the no strings is that you can decide what you need. If you could have a list of A, B, C, and D, it's rather insulting to you. Like, you don't know what the best thing is for your child. It says someone doesn't have confidence in you as the mom. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you decide, that's an empowering thing, I think.
Right. So, like with SNAP and stuff, like government assistance, it's more so regulated on how you spend your money.
Exactly.
You can't buy certain things. So, like, let's say if you want to get a little pizza to indulge your, with your child, you can't even do that.
Yeah.
So it was like, these little things that you were able to do was so big for, me and my kid. Because it's like, we don't have to be worried about, hey, we're going to get our income taken away because we can't spend it on this. Or, hey, we can go to the museum without getting in trouble for using the money on there,
Yeah, exactly. If it's about almost half of the women raising kids alone in the United States of America are living in poverty. It does drive me crazy that fathers basically are off the hook. I mean, to me, we should nail these guys in the delivery room. Just find out who they are and take money out of their wages like you do if you're divorced.
It's their baby, too.
Does anybody talk about this in national politics? If so, I haven't heard it.
We'll get to that problem next after we've solved this one.
Yeah,
but Marcia, you have a point. In fact, when I called in a year and a half ago and talked about it, that was your question at the time, was how many moms that you're with have their partners with them.
Exactly.
And it was, at the time, it was most do not.
But even if their partner was in Oklahoma, if you
to be taking responsibility.
To send them money.
Yeah.
Send them money. And I think it's just disgraceful that so many of these men just get away with this.
Where's the money come from?
From individuals and from philanthropists, from foundations. And in fact, we've got an idea now. And we designed Family Health Project to scale. So the referrals come from community health centers, like the 2 we just named, with a very simple screen. And from there, all the systems are in place. Everything is ready to scale. So right now we're working with another 30 moms. We aim to grow that. With a little bit more money, we can. There are other areas of Massachusetts in particular that we want to get to. But the idea now is on the website, we have arranged that every penny of every dollar donated over the website goes directly to a mom. directly.
Great. That's great.
No overhead, no fee. This does not have to be expensive. We have 2 FTEs.
What's that?
Full-time
employee.
Oh, full-time employees.
2.
Okay. 2.
And we could add another 1,000 moms and not add appreciably to staff. We might have to clone Kelly Journey, our staff person, our support person. But other than that, it's designed to grow.
FamilyHealthProject.org again. So this is private money, and with all due respect, there's only so much private money.
Yep.
I mean, if this is such a good idea, as we learned with the child tax credit, the earned income tax credit.
Right. So the idea is to model the program.
For government to decide it's in their interest to do that.
Chelsea did this too.
It's really interesting.
Chelsea, Cambridge, Somerville.
Yep.
But Cambridge, Chelsea, I should say, because we spoke to her, Jill Shaw and the Shaw Family Foundation were a significant part of the funding of that, at least at the beginning. But go ahead, Joe, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, there's, even where I live, there's plenty of money, but not enough to move it across the continent.
So are governments, other than individual communities that get it, are governments taking this more seriously as maybe a way to get people out of poverty?
They're beginning to. They've seen it, and actually Mitt Romney had a proposal a few years ago that was trying to kind of bring the circle around.
Meaning what?
Meaning that he had the idea that, this was first proposed, the guaranteed income was first proposed by none other than Richard Nixon in 74. But the idea was to level it all out, reduce bureaucracy, which was in Romney's interest, and see if there wasn't a more efficient way to support families in need. By the way, every European country and every Scandinavian countries have been doing this for about 100 years.
Yeah. And
I'm not overstating that. 100 years.
And help with childcare and decent maternity leaves.
The child benefit returns about $15 for every buck you put into it. You can't beat it.
Yeah, well, maybe someday, we'll do.
Well, that's why I think if we can model it and grow Family Health Project, then we'll do it on our own. Because if we wait for government, hell will freeze over.
Hey, Dahlia, it was good to meet you. Say hi to Gianni. Lots of luck in the future.
Thank you for having me.
Joe, we'll talk to you again. Good luck with the project.
Thank you. And good luck with Gianni. I hope
you
get some good help with the autism.
Thank you so much.
You're very
welcome.
welcome.
Lot of cotton candy. Let me just say that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm much more
Not too much.
Frank.
He needs to cut down.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's great to see you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you very much for coming in. We've been speaking with Family Health Project CEO Joe Knowles and Roxbury mother Dahlia. For more info on the project, go to familyhealthproject.org. That's familyhealthproject.org. Thanks again, both of you, for coming in. Coming up after this quick break, it's our Two More Things segment. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's been 10 years since the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage. Religious support for the right to marry has grown significantly, but there's still substantial opposition from some religious groups.
As you saw with the overturn of Roe, that took 50 years. So we would have to be patient.
I'm Elsa Chang. That story on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And New England Botanic Garden at Tower Hill, a garden destination 50 miles from Boston. Visitors can discover summer with thousands of blooms, twilight experiences, art exhibitions, and educational programs for all ages. NEBG.org. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, insurance coverage from healthcare experts for businesses, individuals, families, and retirees. Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Learn more at mgbhp.org/everyday.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow. We have live music Friday tomorrow. We have Eric Deggans from NPR doing our press play. We have Bill McKibben on environmental issues. We have a terrific cast of characters. We hope you join us at the library tomorrow. But for right now, it's time for two more things where each of us do. Well, you know what we do. Marjorie, take it away.
Well, I'm very happy with the superintendent of schools over in Newton, Anna Nolan, because she plans to reinforce state vaccine requirements for kids coming into school this fall. You know, they get rid of a lot of them during COVID, and they're going to block students from attending school with or without up-to-date vaccinations. And I'm so happy about this. I've said this a million times. But kids who are immunocompromised for some reason, maybe they had a tough disease or went through cancer treatments, or they have any other disease which prevents their being able to get a vaccine because of their immune system, this will protect all those children so they don't have to fear being in a classroom with kids who are unvaccinated. And by the way, they had they had a chickenpox outbreak over there, and that got action going. What they're going to do in Newton, they're going to have the school nurses going to give out the vaccines to kids who don't have them if they want to go back to school. And unfortunately, they're not, and they couldn't do this, I don't think, get rid of the religious objection.
But you said the State House, you said the other day, is working on that, right?
Well, they're working on it. But I mean, we could be 6 feet under before they do anything about it. I mean, they're so slow. They should get rid of it because it's a bogus claim. What you can do is have a doctor-approved exemption if you have an immunocompromised student. So kudos to Anna Nolan at the Newton Public Schools for cracking down on people who want to skip vaccines, risking the health of immunocompromised children in that school.
So Marjorie Egan and I started our day today by watching or listening to 45 minutes of Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, unhinged, angry, uninformed, vicious towards at least some people there, including the press, trying to make the case to how successful, according to them, the obliteration of the nuclear stockpile of the Iranians was. I was offended by it in every way. I am offended by him, but I don't know him. So Marjorie and I decided it'd be worthwhile to remind you of what someone who knows him very well, his mother had to say about him, which we learned during his confirmation. Son, I've tried to keep quiet about your character and behavior, but after listening to the way you made Samantha feel today, his former wife, I cannot stay silent. And as a woman and your mother, I feel I must speak out. You are an abuser of women. That is the ugly truth, and I have no respect for any man that belittles, lies, cheats, sleeps around, and uses women for his own power and ego. You are that man and have been for years, and as your mother, it pains me and embarrasses me to say that, but it is the sad, sad truth. I am not a saint, far from it, so don't throw that in my face. But your abuse over the years to women, dishonesty, sleeping around, betrayal, debasing, belittling needs to be called out. Sam is a good mother and a good person under the circumstances that you created. And I know deep down you know that. For you to try to label her as unstable for your own advantage is despicable and abusive. Is there any sense of decency left in you? She did not ask for or deserve any of what has come to her by your hand. Neither did Meredith. Was that another wife? Or
He's on wife number 3.
Okay, fine. I know you think this is one big competition. We have taken her side. Bunk. We are on the side of good, and that is not you. Go ahead and call me self-righteous. I don't care. Don't you dare run to her and cry foul that we shared with us. That's what babies do. It's time for someone, I wish it was a strong man, to stand up to your abusive behavior and call it out, especially against women. We still love you. We are broken by your behavior and lack of character. I don't want to write emails like this and never thought I would. If it damages our relationship further, so be it. But at least I've said my piece. And yes, we are praying for you, and you don't deserve to know how we are praying. So skip the snarky reply. I don't want an answer to this. I don't want to debate you. You twist and abuse everything I say anyway. But on behalf of all the women, and I know it's many, you have abused in some way, I say, get some help and take an honest look at yourself. Signed, Mom. And by the way,
this is Mom. Mom, I want a thrashing from your mother.
Subsequently, of course, when he was nominated, she said, well, I was angry or whatever I was. But I want to echo what you said to, she didn't mention his needing to be carried out of rooms to his hotel room because he was so drunk. You said this to Chuck Todd. Didn't you see that person? I don't mean vis-a-vis women, even though to that Jennifer, whatever her name is from Fox News.
He has a bad temper. He's out of control.
I agree.
You could see him by that performance this morning. I could understand when one of those wives talked about how she got in a closet to hide from him. He, of course, denied that was true. You could see it. He's out of control. He has an anger issue, clearly. But I want to know, Jim,
yes,
what's up with the hair? Has he got mousse in his hair, or wax in his hair, or Vaseline in his hair, or maybe it's olive oil in his hair? I don't know. But take a look at that hair, and I'm not sure where he's got stuck to it.
Can I say one thing to you about him?
Yes.
I have no respect for any man that belittles, lies, cheats, sleeps around, and uses women for his own power and ego. You are that man, says Mrs.
He's our
Mom.
man. Mrs. Mom.
Pete Hegg says mother.
When your own mom turns on you, what can you say?
What an email. Jesus. My God.
I know. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley is going to join us, talk about the third anniversary of abortion being outlawed in the United States. You're listening to BPR on GBH. We'll be right back.
The best way to support your GBH radio listening is by becoming a GBH sustainer. It takes just 2 minutes to enroll and a few dollars a month on your credit card. Small monthly contributions, huge impact. Learn more at gbh.org/sustainer.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham. Their leading heart and vascular specialists are committed to providing breakthrough care to patients with cutting-edge research and innovative treatments. Learn more at massgeneralbrigham.org/heart. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its 2025-2026 season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Tipping Point author Malcolm Gladwell, Ken Burns, and conservation photographer Christina Mittermeier. bostonspeakers.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Hour 3 of BPR. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley joins us as it's been 3 years since the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, overturning decades of access to abortion under Roe. 3 years. We'll talk about the harms of reducing access to reproductive health and other things before Pressley and Congress.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then it's Am I the A-Hole Day, the summer edition. So, if you're the only house in the neighborhood with a pool, how obligated are you to open it up to all the neighbors? Who's the bigger jerk? The permissionless pool people or the person peeved their pool is always full with their neighbors' kids? Weigh in next on the third hour of BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The Supreme Court has handed down a major ruling about Planned Parenthood. The justices will allow South Carolina to stop the clinics from getting federal Medicaid money, even for services that are unrelated to abortions. Mary Ziegler is a professor at the University of California Davis School of Law.
The argument that South Carolina and other red states have made essentially is that money is fungible, and that if Planned Parenthood is receiving support for the other services it provides, that allows Planned Parenthood to use fundraising and other money that it gains to offset abortion expenses. So essentially the idea was this would hurt abortion provision one way or another.
The case looked at a provision in a federal law that allows Medicaid patients to choose their own doctors as long as they're qualified providers. President Trump is hosting what the administration is calling one big beautiful event at the White House today. NPR's Tamara Keith reports the event is designed to push Senate Republicans to pass the president's massive tax cut and spending bill.
President Trump has set a July 4th deadline for Congress to get the bill on his desk, working the phones to apply pressure as he flew home from Europe yesterday. And today, an event from the East Room features Americans the White House says will benefit from the bill's tax cuts and other provisions. Truck drivers, firefighters, tipped workers, and others. The White House is pushing back on the message from Democrats that the legislation would benefit the wealthy while taking away health benefits from the poor. September. The measure contains the bulk of the president's legislative agenda, meaning the stakes are high for both him and his party. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
Iran says it's decided to suspend cooperation with the UN's International Atomic Energy Agency after U.S. and Israeli attacks on its nuclear sites. NPR's Jana Raff reports.
Iran's parliament recommended the move, and on Thursday, state media said the country's influential Guardian Council approved it. Iranian officials had said they were considering the suspension after unprovoked attacks by Israel and the U.S. on Iranian facilities. Iran has blamed the IAEA for paving the way for attacks by declaring Iran non-compliant with the agency's monitoring requirements. Iran has made clear that the suspension does not mean it will pull out of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. It says its uranium enrichment program is for peaceful purposes. Israel and the U.S. say the attacks were aimed at halting a nuclear weapons program. Jane Araf, NPR News, Amman.
Stocks are trading higher on Wall Street at this hour. The Dow is up 343 points. This is NPR News in Washington.
And from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Judy Ewell. Newton's Superintendent of Schools is telling parents that students must be fully vaccinated before they go back to class in September. Anna Nolan says students who don't comply and haven't been declared exempt will be excluded from school. Nolan said a recent review of the district's vaccination rate following a chickenpox outbreak revealed that 182 students are not fully vaccinated as measles cases are on the rise in other states. Newton parent Kate Rusgrove Kelly says she agrees with the superintendent's stance.
I'm happy they looked into it and found that we had a few unvaccinated, and I think it's important to educate. It's key to me that there's education portion of it, and then the safety of the kids, number one, is paramount.
The state says students can be exempt on religious grounds or with a note from their doctor explaining why they shouldn't be vaccinated. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu is speaking out after City Councilor Tanya Fernandez-Anderson attended her final meeting yesterday. The District 7 councilor says she'll resign on July 4th after pleading guilty to federal corruption charges. The mayor says the city will support Fernandez-Anderson's former constituents as they wait to elect a new city councilor.
We are focused on making sure that from now until the election takes place and when the role is filled, that residents from this district will have more additional support.
Fernandez-Anderson faces sentencing on July 29th. We're getting a break from the heat, but we could be back in the soup in another way. There's a chance of showers this afternoon, highs in the 70s. Showers possible tonight and tomorrow, temps hovering in the 60s, and wet weather is likely through Saturday and possibly Sunday morning. Right now, 71 in Boston. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the George Lucas Educational Foundation, creator of Edutopia, dedicated to improving the learning experience for America's students by sharing what works in pre-K through 12 education at edutopia.org.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I want to mention that we're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow for Live Music Friday, care of the Charles River Jazz Festival, which is going to be great. Plus, NPR's Eric Deggans for Press Play, environmentalist Bill McKibben, and our media maven Sue O'Connell, fresh from her brilliant coverage of the Karen Reed trial. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We're joined now on Zoom by Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Congresswoman represents Massachusetts' 7th Congressional District, and among her responsibilities, she is co-chair of the Reproductive Freedom Caucus. Congresswoman, it's good to see you. Thanks for your time.
Good to be with you.
We're a little light on volume.
Good to be with you.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
I know how to project. That was a somber tone because I feel very heavy in this moment.
You do?
I think we know.
Is this about where we are with Roe? Or is it something different? It's where we are with Roe. Okay.
Exactly about where we are with Roe.
Tell us.
Well, first, this week marks the third anniversary of the Supreme Court denying our bodily autonomy and ripping away the fundamental right to abortion care in this country. It was really the first domino to fall in this extremist march towards a nation of forced birth within the context really of a march towards authoritarianism. And those bans have denied people basic, necessary, life-saving medical care. The Black maternal morbidity crisis has only worsened. Thinking a lot about Adriana Smith as an example out of Georgia, if you were following that very tragic circumstance, a Black woman, a nurse, who presented with an extreme migraine and headaches, as is so often the case for many Black women in this country in our healthcare system. Her pain was delegitimized, denied, and she was ostensibly gaslit, sent home, only to return and to be diagnosed with numerous blood clots, and then declared brain dead and forced, her family was denied the respect and the agency to grieve, mourn, honor their in the way in which they wanted to. And because of a draconian bill on the books in Georgia, Adriana Smith incubated, she was pregnant, a baby for many, many weeks.
Yeah.
And mere days ago, had a posthumous C-section, ostensibly because her body was decaying, and that baby had to be removed. And so, this is we predicted that the fall of Roe would mean loss of life, and people have died. And this is an issue that's impacted directly many families. It matters to millions. People have died, and now more will. And the fact that in my role as the co-chair of the Reproductive Freedom Caucus, I was convening a hearing in our Capitol today in partnership with our Democratic leadership and the Democratic Women's Caucus. And in real time, while the president of Planned Parenthood, Alexis McGill Johnson, and others who were sharing harrowing accounts and stories of the trauma of being denied access to abortion for miscarriage management and what that impact has been on their lives, we hear another ruling from the Supreme Court that is just damning. And you were hearing a little bit about it coming into this. So this decision is going to allow states to ban Planned Parenthood from getting Medicaid reimbursements for cancer screenings and other care. So again, they keep using the issue of abortion care, which is health care, but this is really about bodily autonomy and freedom and reproductive care writ large. Just in full transparency, when I came to Boston to attend Boston University, Planned Parenthood was where I received health care. It's where I presented with debilitating pain and was diagnosed with uterine fibroids. It is where, after my campus sexual assault, I went for STI screening and testing and for counseling. And so this decision, this is not in the abstract. When we say that people will get sicker, that people will die, nobody should be denied the essential and critical care that they need. There should be no discrimination based upon how they pay their insurance. And Planned Parenthood provides more than just abortion care. So, my colleagues across the aisle would arguably say, well, if you're a Medicaid recipient, just don't get your care from Planned Parenthood. But the fact of the matter is, especially in rural communities and in so many healthcare deserts, rural and urban communities, sometimes more often than not, that's the only provider that you can access.
I'm sorry, just to remind people, too, that federal funds don't pay for abortions at Planned Parenthood because of the Hyde Amendment years ago. Yeah. So what it was paying for was those kinds of healthcare things you talked about, cancer screenings, breast cancer screenings, Pap tests, all those kinds of things. And it's really difficult, as people know, to get a primary care or a gynecological care in Boston. You have to wait sometimes months to get a doctor. I just want to throw that in.
So I'm always happy to see you all. My heart is heavy, but I'm certainly no less resolved in this fight. I was saying earlier today that when I'm tempted to sort of, question how low can they go, how bad can it get? Instead, I'm asking myself, well, how hard am I prepared to fight? When Roe was stricken down, I was at my daughter's 8th grade graduation, starting that day with such hope and excitement for this milestone and achievement. In real time, learned that Roe had been stricken down, was immediately felt with dread that my daughter would be going to bed with less rights than she woke up with. Yeah. Now, in a number of days, she'll be 17 years old. We're looking at colleges. And a big part of that calculus is where can she pursue her higher education and be able to access health care. So, this Medina decision out of the Supreme Court today, again, who have been enlisted as co-conspirators in this extremism, I just can't believe that these people really want their legacy to be making people sicker. It's just whichever way, whether it's this big ugly bill, whether it's the falling of Roe, whether it's the ruling today regarding Medicaid and Planned Parenthood. We're talking about in upwards of 200 clinics that could be closing. And understand with Medicaid, when you marry that with what's happening with this big ugly bill, there's 83 Medicaid recipients in this country. 1 in 5 of them are 80 million. There's 1 in 5 of them are Black, and 40% of births are covered by Medicaid. So when you layer all of these things, it is just outrageous.
Okay, so you, as you always say to us, as you said a minute ago, you have to be full of hope and you're fighting. I'll go back to the how low can we go, because that's where we reside, Congresswoman Pressley. So RFK Jr. has said that he wants to do a, quote, complete review on a drug that is the primary vehicle for people being able to get an abortion, even post-Dobbs, even though the drug has been proven to be safer than aspirin for a quarter of a century. That's mifepristone. Do you worry about RFK, his whole infrastructure, and mifepristone, or no?
Of course I worry about it. But again, I want to reiterate that mifepristone is safe, it's effective. It's how, half of abortions, are provided through medication abortion through mifepristone. His rhetoric is dangerous. His policies are dangerous. His worldview is dangerous. He should never have been confirmed. And, he traffics in conspiracy theories. And the fact that we could have a Secretary of Health and Human Services who, for all intents and purposes, is anti-science. Science is on our side here. The data is on our side here, whether you're talking about mifepristone or, any host of other issues that he's brought up. So it's deeply troublesome and again, infuriating.
One last semi-related thing. We decided to start today's show by celebrating, in a real way, I guess, the 10th anniversary, as you know, of Obergefell, which is today, same-sex marriage, coming a decade or so after same-sex marriage was legalized here by our state's highest court. You know that in that case, Clarence Thomas said that the principle that allowed the overruling of Roe v. Wade should be applied in an effort to relook at a whole bunch of things, including the Obergefell case.
You're trying to keep hope alive. I'm trying to come here and sit at this virtual table with y'all. And now
I should shut up. Okay, I'm going to drop it.
Set me off.
Okay, I'm going to do one a little more positive. I don't know if this is this is semi-positive. What'd you say? What'd she say?
Give me a poll.
Okay. Here we go. Let's try this one.
Okay.
PBS and NPR, the rescission thing that included also a program that saved 25 million lives, PEPFAR, started by George W. Bush, 214 and 212. I hope, is this a positive question? Well, it's not on, well, whatever. 214 and 212. Some of those 214, your Republican colleagues, she's going to shut off her Zoom connection in about 2 seconds here. Some of your Republican colleagues come from districts whose constituents have nothing but NPR and PBS as their news source, their public information source, their PSA source. So is this total sycophancy to the or fear of the president of the United States? Or are we missing something?
Jim, I mean, what else could it be? I mean, when people are doubling down on defunding Elmo and Daniel Tiger, while also cutting Medicaid, ripping health care away from people, denying hungry babies food here in this country and around the globe. I mean, listen, I get it. You know, Donald Trump, he thinks he's in a, I don't know, like this is cosplay, like this isn't even, real life, just people in our lives. We're just pawns in some game he's playing. And, Republicans, in the House, they fear retribution, and there is this culture of grievance and retaliation. And so now they are more focused on keeping their job than doing the jobs that they were sent here to do. And so what does that mean? It means that they are cowards, and it means that they are complicit in this wholesale harm, which no one will be exempt from. This harm is coming for everyone. Every single person that calls this country home will be affected if this Republican big ugly bill, this billionaire bill, becomes law. And if any of these and with the recent decision by SCOTUS today, everyone will feel that. These chaotic tariff temper tantrums, this totally unnecessary trade war that Donald Trump had entered into, everyone will feel the impacts of that. His chaotic and reckless foreign policy decisions, a complete denial of Congress as a co-equal branch of government, and our role. He is he's lawless, he's godless, and he is doing things that are unconstitutional. And so everyone is going to feel this harm. So my colleagues, and I'm telling people, just keep the pressure up, y'all. There needs to be public outcry. They need to hear from their constituents that I need Medicaid to pay for my asthma medication, to pay for my heart medication, to pay for my blood pressure medication. I live in a rural community. I need access to Planned Parenthood. I run a small business, and I'm going to have to shutter my doors because you've been the economy is so volatile and unpredictable with how you're moving on tariffs that I have real supply chain issues. I have real payroll concerns. Governors and mayors, the implications and the fears that they have around their state and municipal budgets, everyone's going to feel this. So there needs to be outcry. There needs to be pressure. I don't know, y'all. Look for those Republicans that won with less than 3% of the vote, and let them know.
There's somebody who looks exactly like you that told me that I was being too negative 5 minutes ago. Do you know that person?
I didn't say you was being negative. I said I wanted you to be mindful of the mood that you were putting me in when you started voting.
Well,
I was talking to
negative. You were telling the truth, and I'm like, you need to make some choices here on how you want the rest of our time to go here today.
We're talking to Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley.
Let's talk about something that might be a little bit more upbeat. I don't know. We'll get your take on this. But this Zohran Mamdani in New York City did much better than a lot of people thought. Beat Mario Cuomo. He could be the Democratic nominee in New York for mayor. And if he is, he'll probably, he may not for sure. But it's looking good. But he's a very progressive guy. He wants universal pre-K. He wants to hand out these baby baskets to new moms in New York City. He wants to cap rent. And I was talking about this with Todd. When people say that's too far left, I think, really? I mean, don't people want better childcare, better schools?
She's smiling now. Yeah. You're doing well, Marjorie. Keep going.
He didn't win everywhere, but I thought that might be a positive sign for where people are at, especially young people that feel like the American dream is like totally yesterday. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. So just a couple of things. I've met Zohran. He's, been in my office, sat around the very table that I'm around right now.
Oh, yeah? What'd you think?
Well, I thought him impassioned, smart, deeply empathetic, and very impressive. And this is, well before he was running for mayor. Now, having served in municipal government myself, you know that I believe deeply in the transformative power of municipal government and the impact that local leadership can have. It is the form of government closest to the people. And, I think his vision is one that inspired, that compelled people during a season where there is certainly a deficit of hope, given all that we're navigating as a country in this moment, that he was a source for hope. And also he affirmed something that I've been, saying for a while, which is that we need to advance solutions that go as far and as deep as the herd. We have to be bold. And so that's been my fear all along as a party, that people would reflexively, on the heels of the last presidential election, say this is the time to sort of moderate our aspirations, play it safe. But as I've recounted previously, we lost the youth vote in the last election. And that to me is an indicator of the fact that we were once the party of the future and that we're no longer seen as that. And I mean, it was a fact, a number of things that contributed to younger voters being disenchanted and not showing up. That's really what happened. They didn't go and vote Republican, but they just didn't show up. And I think they were compelled and motivated because this was a simple message. It was someone saying, I see you and you deserve to have a life that is affordable. And when you have the peace of mind and the dignity of knowing that you're going to be able to pay for your housing, to be able to pay for your food, to take care of your baby, then that gives you the permission to dream. So it's a very basic principle. It's radical in the sense that it gets to the root of systemic challenges and inequities. And the fact that this is considered bold, I mean, this should be baseline. That we all agree that people deserve to have their basic needs met, to create a system, an ecosystem where you can dare to dream and to want more for you and future generations. And so it was a people-powered movement, people-centered, people-powered movement campaign. I know something about that.
Yeah, you do. You do.
Underestimated.
Yep.
What do you mean underestimated? I always predicted you were going to win that congressional race.
No,
you know
Ayanna
that, right?
Pressley shocked the whole region when she beat Michael Capuano, a longtime congressman out of Somerville. Nice guy. He did a lot of good work, but you walloped him.
What's that?
To win the
city council. Yep, that's true.
I mean, first time running citywide, having never been elected to anything. And so that was shocking to people as well. But, again, it was about meeting people where they are. It was about defying conventional strategies about how to engage people, how to mobilize people, how to turn people out. And much like my council race, he was able to expand the electorate and excite people who were infrequent voters who had checked out and get people who have not participated to participate. So very, very inspiring. I do want to share one bit of encouraging news on top of that, because you talked about baby baskets.
Yeah.
And that is, if you didn't see in my work on the Financial Services Committee, when Secretary Bissett came before the committee, the Treasury Secretary, I pushed him on an exemption for baby goods with these tariffs.
Oh.
And he did commit on the record, this was a month ago, he said it was under consideration. And I did this week lead a letter with 25 of my colleagues, pushing them to just do it now. Because those out-of-pocket expenses for strollers, for car seats, these tariffs stand to have an impact on the cost of those goods. And so we're pushing for that exemption of baby goods. So
that's fabulous.
Yeah, they're astronomically expensive, all this stuff. I don't know how people do it today.
Yeah, and when you say something like a car seat, that's law of the land in 50 states.
Yep.
So not only is it, an essential for you to take your baby to medical appointments or to visit with family or, just to live, it's required.
Yeah, they won't let you leave the hospital, right? Without one. Yeah.
So at a time when people are having to stretch every dollar in this moment, embracing for the impact, if this big ugly bill becomes law, which again, we cannot treat it as an inevitability and we have to push till the final moment here, these sorts of things will make a difference.
Congresswoman, it's good to see you. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. I much appreciate it, Congresswoman.
We do.
We've been speaking with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Thank you. Who represents the 7th Congressional District. Coming up after a quick break, our staff loves making me read these transitions from something serious
So do
to
I, by
something
the way. I
not
love
so
them as
serious.
much as our coworkers
That's right, I always
do.
get stuck with it. Okay, but we do love the segments. It is time for Am I the A-hole? That is next after this quick break. Who's the bigger jerk? The person with the pool who doesn't share it in the hot summer weather, or the people who just jump in without asking? When next, you listen to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, today marks 10 years since the Supreme Court knocked down same-sex marriage bans across the country. The case was argued by the same lawyer who helped make Massachusetts the first state to legalize same-sex marriage. And protesters are holding a demonstration in downtown Boston over the situation with Iran and the scope of presidential war powers. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And New England Botanic Garden at Tower Hill, a garden destination 50 miles from Boston. Visitors can discover summer with thousands of blooms, twilight experiences, art exhibitions, and educational programs for all ages. NEBG.org. And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow, Eric Dagans for Press Play. He's from NPR, of course. Live Music Friday from the Charles River Jazz Festival, plus environmentalists Bill McKibben and Sue O'Connell. So it's time for Marjorie's favorite segment of the week, which I love too. Another round of Am I the A-hole? The number to call is 877-301-8970. It's a good seasonal one. We have a summary for you this week, inspired by one of Robin Abrams' reprinted advice columns in the Globe today about the only pool owner in the neighborhood. So here's the deal. Every summer, their pool becomes the de facto community pool. And while this person says they're happy to play host, particularly in those really hot days, things have started to get what they consider to be a little out of hand. Neighbors are overstaying their welcome, sticking around after the hosts have gone inside. Yeah. Or even when the hosts have left the house. Sometimes half a dozen kids will be running around like maniacs and that sort of thing. This person writes, some days I really would like to just sit quietly by my pool without having to play host. So the number is 877-301-8970. Does this neighborhood pool czar have a responsibility in the summertime to welcome their neighbors to the pool? And if they don't, are they the a-holes? Or are the neighbors who have no right to be there when she allows them to be there, that's fine, are they the a-holes for complaining that they're not getting essentially access to what they consider to be a community pool? The number is 877-301-8970. Who's the a-hole? Margie, why don't you start?
The people that are taking advantage of this woman in her
neighborhood people?
pool. Absolutely.
What?
Listen to this one.
Wait, the neighborhood people are the a-holes?
Yes.
Were you with me a couple of days ago when we were talking about we should have public access to all beaches? Were you part of that discussion?
Jim, most towns in Massachusetts, you know what they have?
What?
Pools.
Yeah.
That you can go to if you don't have a pool in your backyard.
Yeah, but there's one right next door to these people.
As Robin Abrams says, and she's the person that writes these columns.
The advice person,
yeah. She talks about set boundaries. I mean, I think it's lovely to invite people. Say it's a really hot day like it was this week. Maybe if you want to have the kids come over, say, you know what, you can come over from like 4 to 6, or you can come over from 3 to 5. That's great. But these people are staying in the pool, 6 or 7 kids at a time, and their parents, when the family is not there anymore.
It's the only pool in the neighborhood.
You know what? Suppose somebody drowns in that pool, Jim.
Well, obviously, their legal issues. The parents got to be there.
There are legal
you can't
issues.
Have the kids
Kid
without
drowns
them.
in your pool, you lose your house.
Okay.
I think that's what happens. So
Zoe thinks, in the spirit of Mamdani, that I am running a socialist campaign for mayor of Cambridge, and my platform, which actually would be successful.
Yeah.
That's the people's pool. I think that's true.
Listen to this texter. This person is a genius. Are you obliged to invite neighbors in for a meal when you get a new stove? Or do their laundry when you get a new washer dryer? How about riding in a new car? A pool is certainly an attractive nuisance in some neighborhoods, but not
That's a
an
legal
open
term.
invitation to neighbors unless so stated by the owners.
Well, I think there should at least be, let's put it this way. Can you at least agree there should be several hours a day I'm serious, where the whole neighborhood. By the way, let me tell you the honest part of this.
Yeah.
If I had a pool, then the a-holes would be the neighbors. If I didn't have a pool, the owner of the pool would be. But my attitude is it's the same deal as long as you stay within bounds. I'm not saying you should move in kind of thing, but I think it's not unreasonable to say that for a certain limited number of hours, your pool is my pool. I mean, I think that's a fairly simple notion.
Okay.
Okay, yourself. 877-301-8970. Here is a very similar situation. Marge Simpson, who I generally look to for my decisions on these things, she's dealing with a similar issue in this early Simpsons episode when the family gets a pool. Exactly. So let's talk to Mary in the car. Mary, welcome to BPR. You're next on BPR. I just said that, didn't I? Hi. Who's the a-hole?
Well, I think that anybody that helps themselves to someone's pool, it's a huge risk. I have one, and it scares me to death to think about somebody just helping themselves to the pool because of somebody potentially drowning. I mean, the law is you're supposed to have a fence and a lock.
I know, and you're right. Attractive nuisance, that's the term, yeah.
I mean, I have nightmares about that. I have had nightmares that there is a child underwater, and just to think that could happen.
Well, Mary, what if this? How about this? Whenever neighborhood kids come over, they have to be accompanied by at least one parent. How about that as a compromise?
Parents are having planters punches out by the pool shack.
Go ahead.
They're bringing their barbecues.
What's that, Mary?
People don't realize how much it costs to. I mean, when we first moved into our house and having a pool, just getting it clean enough so that people can safely swim in the water is a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
The chemicals are very, very expensive, the monitoring. So it may look nice, but it still may not be clean and safe for people to jump in.
Well, Mary,
you may not think it's good for people to
the
be
legal
in the water
issues
yet.
you raise, I don't have a good answer to. Except maybe they should sign a waiver or something. Mary, those are good arguments. Thank you for sharing them with us.
That's what
here.
Robin Abraham says in her
Abrams,
column.
I think
Abrams,
is how she
whatever it
says
is.
herself.
The situation is ridiculous. You need to set boundaries. Someone gets hurt. Don't let misguided guilt make you wishy-washy. It's your property. Your responsibility.
Anonymous texter says, sounds like Jim lost the coin flip today on which host was assigned to defend the indefensible. No, it's not ridiculous. Let me just say again, I'm talking about compromise.
You don't mean this for a second.
I do for a second. I totally do.
No, you
if there's no pool in the neighborhood, 2 hours a day, you say, with a parent having to come, and you sign a waiver that if anything happens to my kid, that the owner is not liable. For 2 hours a day, the neighborhood kids can swim in your
money
pool.
on the side, charge them $20 a hit. You know, you might have a couple $100 every day that might make you change your attitude about
Let me tell you something. The reason you're being so totally unempathetic, you never had an experience I did. There was one neighborhood pool where I grew up in Philadelphia. I remember leaning up against the fence on a hot day and saying to the owner, please let me in. It was really traumatic, and all I wanted was a little dip.
Lie. You grew up in the middle of Philadelphia next to the art museum. There's no pool.
No,
near
actually,
you.
before that, I lived in Germantown.
Oh, Germantown.
Sort of
okay.
not. It's in
so you're
Philly,
begging for the pool.
Begging the pool.
Yeah. Oh, somebody's reminded of that Burt Lancaster movie. Remember the
swimmer?
Yeah, it was a John Cheever short story. Burt Lancaster, in a bathing suit the entire time, decides to swim
the young
home.
Burt Lancaster.
That's right.
Yeah.
By using miles of his neighbor's pools, and he goes from pool to pool to pool. And as his texter John Beverly says, some awkward moments as he just dives in his bathing suit.
Can I ask you a question, which you dismissed because it didn't fit your argument? You do believe that on what is currently the property of a homeowner under law, meaning that between the high and low tide mark, as we discussed the other day, that I and my children should be able to use that person's property?
I do.
Okay, what's the difference between that and me using their pool?
The difference is you have a pool usually in the closed section of your backyard, and you may want to be able to sit out there with your family.
Maybe I want to sit up to the low tide mark on my beach house.
Yeah, but that's different. It's not like in the middle of your house. It's a little bit of ways, unless you're living right on top of the ocean, which most people are not. You may be 50 feet back, 75 feet back. These people are right in the middle of your house.
Can I tell you something? Because you're trying to paint me as an extremist on this, let me just make clear.
You are an extremist on this.
No, the compromise is a couple hours a day, one.
Yes.
The parents have to accompany the neighborhood kids. And third, one free drink from the... And beyond, they got one free drink from the homeowner for the adults.
The homeowner must make a summer drink, a summer spritzer. You know, what's another summer drink? Gin and tonic, I guess, is a summer drink. Yeah, that's right. She's got to give everybody and allow them to cook their cheeseburgers at the outdoor grill. Lots of people have those grills, things with the outdoor.
I know what they are. Do you know also? We're going to get to calls in 1 second. Do you know how much people hate the person that owns the pool?
They hate them.
I'm serious, if they don't share a little bit, okay. Would you hate them if they had a pool and you weren't allowed to ever use it with your young kids when they were young?
I might resent them.
Okay, fine. That's my point.
Listen to this. I hate my neighbor with a pool since he's also out there with his leaf blower at 7:30 each morning, wrecks my coffee on the porch. Speaking of porches, if you have a nice deck in your house and your neighbors, you're the only deck in the neighborhood, Jim, so everybody could be able to come over and sit in your deck. I believe you have a deck.
I can answer. I do have a deck.
Yeah.
Not my deck is the answer. But other neighborhood decks, of course they should. Of course they should.
Okay.
I'm trying to be, fact specific.
Jim's basic thing here is if it's my pool, nobody's getting in.
No.
But if it's Joe's pool across the street,
I'm trying to be amusing.
Then everybody.
Of course,
if
I had a pool, of course I'd let people use it during limited hours. Marianne, you're in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. You're on with whoever you are. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan. Hi.
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 Hi. How are you?
Hi.
We used to be that pool, and when I was growing up. But I'm like 70 now.
Yeah.
So it was the old days. Nobody worried about lawsuits back then. The whole neighborhood vacation together and everything else. But my mother had a sign on the gate, 2 to 5 with a note from your mother. Kids would come from all over town, and she'd sit out there with her whistle, and she had rules posted. And if you broke the rules, third time you were out. And she'd put kids in timeout before timeout was a thing.
Wow.
And it worked out great. The only problem was I never knew who my real friends were.
That's right. That's a
Mary,
very
don't
good
go
point.
away. Marianne, this is exactly what I proposed. And how come you're not ridiculing her? Like 3 to 5 or whatever she said, people were able to swim there.
Yeah, well, that's lovely. But most mothers cannot be around 3 to 5 anymore because they're all working so they can afford the pool in this ridiculous economy, Marianne. What do you think about that?
Say that again?
It's the rare mother who can afford to be home these days watching the kids 2 to 5 or 3 to 5, whatever is in the pool, because they're all working, right?
Well, my mother worked at home. She took in sewing. She did anything she could. She did green stamps and everything else. And it was expensive, yeah. But my dad was a city boy, and he didn't like the lake because he didn't like the fish, and he didn't like being able to see in the water. And he wanted his kids to grow up in the suburb, and he wanted us to, we couldn't afford camp or horses or anything else that other people had. And he couldn't afford the pool either. And it took him years and years and years to pay it off. But
he did the right thing.
Way to grow up.
He was a communitarian.
It was a great way to grow up.
Marianne, you crushed Marjorie like a bug.
Me.
Thank you
I'm crushed
for
like
your
a bug.
excellent call. By the way,
trying to recover.
Somebody, I assume it's one of our colleagues,
yes,
reminded
the
us.
thing.
Yeah, but
we did do this.
I never heard of Swimply. It's this app where you can rent for an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
Not somebody's pool in the neighborhood. First of all, there aren't that many pools in the neighborhood. Let's face it, at least in the city. I don't want to badmouth this company, but let me just say, I tried using the app. immediately after it came up on the air, it was really not very helpful.
It wasn't?
It was not very easy to use. Maybe it's different now. But this is Swimply, Swimply.
It says there's 4 million plus users, Jim.
Well, that's what they say. I don't know what it is. In any case, but Marianne had it right. Her mother, 3 to 5, she policed it carefully. There were rules of the road or whatever she said there. And that's what I consider to be a good neighbor. Marianne, thank you for the call. 877-301-8970 is the number. Where would you like us to go next?
A texter says, have a monthly pool day for the neighbors. Also, don't show up to your neighbor's pool without pool stuff like filters, etc.
I agree. You, of course, bring your own.
Or at least a coupon gift to the pool store.
Yeah.
Or the pool boy.
Well, you bring. By the way, you bring your own flippers and your own. What's that thing called where you stick it up in the air and you
snorkel?
Snorkel. Thank you.
Can't
bring your own snorkel and your own flippers. And by the way, peeing in the pool should be limited. Do we agree with that?
Lots of people are texting about peeing in the pool.
That's a real problem.
They don't want you to pee in the pool.
No, I think you should not pee in somebody else's pool. Would you agree with that? Fine to pee in your own pool.
I would agree with that.
What?
Nick from Hartford. What do you think, Nick?
That's a good point. Hi, Nick.
Hey there. So I just got back from Chatham yesterday, where we have what I believe is the oldest pool on Cape Cod.
Really?
Whoa. And we deal with this beach access issue.
Yeah.
So I would suggest just tweaking the question of, who is the a-hole, and let people ask, are they the type of people that people want to invite back to a place?
Excellent.
And the example I'll give there is with the beach access, technically the path from our home down to the beach, it's not our access, but the previous owner who had access to most of the beach and the other half of it is, neighbors that allowed us to use it without any, restrictions or anything. We try to be polite and we're very clean. The other half, the old neighbors used to be there. I just hear nothing but stories of how awful they were. If you stepped over their property line, they would just yell. They would just freak out. And no one invited them to the neighborhood parties or anything after the fact. So when the new neighbors moved in, they brought over pies. They said, come to our house for a party. You can use our pool. No problems after that. But on the flip side of that, when a kid did yard work for us for a brief period of time, my mother-in-law gave him access to the pool, said, you and your parents can stop by. But he started showing up with his friends without any notice. So there was a few weeks where I'd walk up to the pool and there would be just a bunch of random kids that no one had given access to. So I think you want to be the person that people are going to invite back, and less so no, I don't think the person who owns the pool is required to do this, but they should be good neighbors. The people coming should ask themselves, how can I be the people that they want to invite back?
There you go.
You're incredible.
Nick, you've really thought this through.
What's that, Nick?
That being said, Jim, if you do open a pool in Cambridge and I'm visiting and really hot after going to the Plow and Stars, just let me know and I'll bring you a drink for some dip action.
Leave your number. I'll get right back to you, Nick. Thank you for the call.
A lot of people are on the same page as Nick. They think that people should offer to donate, maybe to pay for the chemicals for the pool or to bring something to the homeowners.
Exactly. I agree with that.
Contribute to the pool expenses. They should be invited.
Do you remember the other day when there was a large part of the audience of the library urging you to run for some office because you took
I was running for governor.
What was your position?
I don't remember.
Or city council? Well, Zoe, is this you, Zoe? Zoe apparently thinks I should run again for office, and she's using my middle name, which I think would be good. Vote Spence. My middle name, sadly, is Spencer. And my slogan should be, vote Spence. If it's my pool, it's my pool. If it's your pool, it's the people's pool.
Exactly.
That is essentially what my slogan is.
That does seem to be your position. I don't think anyone's agreed with you. Has anybody agreed with you yet, Jim?
Someone also wrote us a thing that disappeared.
Between the ocean and the...
what did that person say?
Well, they said the ocean is a natural resource that belongs to everybody, and a pool is something that you've built, right next to your house or your backyard. Something. I mean, most of the time when you have a pool, it's like right outside the kitchen or it's right outside. It's within your piece of property.
Now, a lot of people, I'm sure these are men, we're getting piles of texts like this, anonymous text there. Where does it end, Jim? My neighbor has a hot spouse. Can I borrow her too? We'll do that on a separate show. We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about pool usage.
Says, Jim is out of his mind. A comfortable mattress does not give you access to my mattress, and an attractive spouse does not give you access to my attractive spouse.
Notice the interest level on that particular angle on this topic.
a lot of those texts, Jim.
Okay, let's go
to Paula in Providence. Hi, Paula.
Hey, Paula.
Hi, how you doing?
We think we're
I
good.
have a story.
Please.
We're ready.
There was, my husband and I used to be in the pool business, and we went to a seminar, and at this seminar, they told us a story about, people, you're selling a pool, you've got to be responsible. So this person was a guest of this family. He went, they were having a couple of drinks, he got drunk, he goes onto the diving board, wants to show off and do a backflip.
Oh, no.
Does a backflip, injures himself, and proceeds to sue his friends, the company who installed the pool guy for not having the water level in the pool, the pool guy who cleaned the pool. He sued everybody. And he won, and he collected, this was a long time ago, so he won either $3.1 million or $2.3 million in the lawsuit.
Wow.
Did the people lose their home?
Probably.
Yeah.
And gave the pool to the drunk guy.
Well, you could craft. I could craft a legal waiver that people would have to sign if they were to use my pool. Because that's when you were in the pool business. What did that mean? Like you built pools? So what did you do?
We installed pools.
Wow, that is a fabulous thing there. Hey, Paula, thanks for calling. We really appreciate it.
Remember the pool boy scandal involving Jerry Falwell Jr. and his wife Becky?
Oh, I do.
Yes.
No, it was Jerry Falwell Jr. Right.
That's right.
It was the pool boy. Was it the pool boy?
The pool boy.
Pool boy.
He was very popular.
But I think he knew. Didn't Jerry Falwell Jr. knew that the pool boy and his wife were...
Over a year after Jerry Falwell Jr. and his wife Becky Falwell confirmed her affair with a pool attendant.
I'm sorry.
The couple opened up in detail about the scandal, and Falwell had to resign from Liberty University about that. I think he may have known. I'm not sure. I'll have to read it during the break.
You could also say they could use the pool. They're not allowed in the house. I think that. Don't you think that's a reasonable a thing there? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
By the way, we have is this a
scandal.
real photograph? We have a photograph of the pool boy from Jerry Falwell's Jr. scandal shaking hands with Donald Trump. I mean, how fitting. He said it's real from the New York Times.
Why was he shaking hands with Donald Trump?
Oh, because it was actually pool boy day at the White House. So they just decided to honor his favorite pool boy, obviously, because he was pool attendant. I'm sorry. Zoe's offended because I called him pool boy.
I didn't know he visited the White House.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
She was having an affair with him, Jim.
Yeah, she was, apparently.
Sally in New Hampshire. Thank you for calling.
Yeah.
Yes, hi. It's me again from New Hampshire.
Well, there you are. Hi, Sally.
Hi. Yeah, I totally think that the neighbor is the a-hole because, those people use their hard-earned money to make a pool for their comfort. They worked hard enough. Obviously, they're doing well. And what if this family decided to also get horses and tennis courts? I mean, so are you entitled to just go over and use the tennis court? What if somebody sprains their ankle on your property? Or what if, the neighbor comes, it crashes your pool and then pees in the pool? It's like, no. You have your property. If that person with the pool is kind enough to say, hey, come on over. Yeah. We're having a few people over. They're designated times and
Sally, what if as you going on, I'm thinking of compromise. What if the person who wants to come in, the neighbor, agrees not to pee in the pool while they're there? Would that change your... Exactly. I knew it would. That would change the dynamic.
Because what if you feel like skinny dipping and you want to be alone?
Exactly.
Well, I think if you're skinny dipping, every neighbor is going to want to be there. So, Sally, that was a very well thought out call. Thank you very much.
I think people should check out the Jerry Falwell Jr. and the Becky pool boy story.
Believe me, I have.
It's really
I did
something.
At the time.
He was only 20, the pool boy.
I know. Here is an anonymous texter. I think this is for you, even though it says Jim. What if you bring an upside-down pineapple to the pool, Jim? Now, we were taught about upside-down pineapples by Christopher Muther, the travel writer for the Globe, about cruise ships.
Cruise ships.
If you're in a cruise ship and you have a cabin and you have an upside-down pineapple on your door, what does that mean, Marjorie?
It means you're a swinger. And a pool boy.
Pool attendant, Zoe says. Pool attendant.
Okay. You're very versatile. Let's go to Joe.
By the way, the real part of this, even though people are attacking you mercilessly, if you owned a pool you really have, if you're going to build a pool, don't you have to, and it's the only one in the neighborhood, you got to say to yourself, there's got to be some expectation of neighborhood usage or everybody's going to hate me, right? Isn't that real? Isn't that real even if it's not fair?
Yeah, I've heard more of it about people who have a basketball court in their backyard.
Well, what's the difference?
Well, I think that the pool is more personal because of the enclosed space that you're in.
The fluids?
Yeah, you hear a lot, not because of the fluids.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that's what you were talking about.
No. I've heard a lot of complaining. If people have a basketball court in the back of their house and the kids want to play basketball and the family doesn't like it and they're off at work and nobody's there, why can't you play basketball in the back of a house? But a pool is different. I think it's a different kind of thing.
You can't even explain why it's different. How is it different?
Because
it doesn't have a hoop in it?
Could get hurt, and it's very expensive to keep the pool, and it's so close to your house, right? Joe in Walpole. Hi, Joe.
Hello there.
Hi there.
Hi.
So I've never owned a pool, but I have heard of people who had a pool who had the solution, I think.
Oh, great. Issue. What is it?
Well, they have the same problem as many of us and with a pool, and that is, yes, you'd like to have guests over, but they show up at unreasonable times.
Exactly.
And so they purchased a flag bracket that went beside their front door in the house.
I like this.
And when the flag was put up, everybody was welcome. And if you saw no flag, please stay home. And it worked beautifully.
Oh, that's a good one.
No angry neighbors. And guests only when you want them.
Now, how often were they inviting the guests? Do you remember, Joe?
Excellent question, Marjorie.
I'm sorry. Well,
how often were they with the flag up or whatever way the flag was supposed to be to indicate guests could come over? Was this every day or was this once every 2 weeks? Or do you have any idea?
Whenever Jim thought the time was right.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. All right.
Do you know whose house that was? That was Mrs. Samuel Alito, actually. His house. Joe from Walpole, thank you. Very much for
Our
that.
staff is not able to help us for the rest of this hour because they're busy reading all about the pool boy.
It's not our staff, it's Jamie. It's Jamie doing it. He was Giancarlo Granda.
That's
was
right.
his name.
And,
Thank you,
and somehow
Jamie.
he wound up shaking Donald Trump's hand in the White House.
Yes.
We don't know what that was about.
Yeah. Wow,
my
he's
God.
pretty good-looking little guy.
He's gorgeous.
There. Oh, wow.
Bill in Westwood.
We're going to do a whole thing on this very soon. Bill, you have 30 seconds. Go ahead, Bill. Go ahead.
Hi, Bill.
Hi. First of all, that drunken jerk with the $3 million settlement, he ought to be in the underworld for the rest of his life.
Oh, the guy hurt himself doing the thing. Yeah. Okay, it was a good point. Go ahead.
Yeah.
What else is your point there?
I had a pool, and we took the board off because it was too dangerous, and we invited our neighbors' kids as long as a parent was with them.
Okay. That's very nice of you. Now, how often did you do this, Bill? Did you do it daily or every once in a while? How'd you work it out?
Anytime they wish to use the pool, they could come over and use the pool.
Let me tell you something.
What a good man you are,
Bill.
Bill.
Thank you. That's a perfect way to end because that's how all of us should be. Now, can we move on here? Stop it. We have a terrific summer intern.
Do.
We don't know if she's going to be back tomorrow after we hear this. We'll see. Her name is Nia Harmon. She pulled together, with the help of the rest of Marjorie's staff, a compilation of allegedly the best and worst moments from BPR over the last couple of weeks, and apparently here it is.
I'm Marjorie Egan.
I'm Fat Boy Browdy.
We're kind of going down the tubes here, Jim. I think that's kind of the problem.
87. What's our number?
We can't be between Aiden, Jimmy. Well, not Jimmy.
I'm not Jimmy,
Jim, Marjorie, and Jamie. Yeah, whatever.
Okay, Marge.
He got to take out a drive-through daiquiri. Wow.
Daiquiri. I'm with Aiden on this. Aiden is suggesting it's not a daiquiri.
It's not?
No, it's a daiquiri.
It's a daiquiri?
Daiquiri.
That's because we're outraged porners, Jim.
Well, we are. Remember, you got to say something after I say something.
I'll remember.
Okay. I'm Jim Browdy.
And I'm Marjorie Egan.
You're really catching on.
I know.
It's amazing.
I know. I didn't turn the page fast enough.
It's only a week and a half, and you're really good.
I'm getting there.
Wait. It's not even that funny. But sorry. Okay. Gotcha.
I think it's just a riot. My whole life is so discombobulated. This week and later in today's show.
Next week.
Is it next week? Is that going to be this week?
This is sort of Friday.
Yeah, it's going to be next Wednesday. A few days from now, 5 days from now. Get me all boggled up.
Just show up whenever you want. She'll be here.
Okay, that's next on Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live at the Boston. No, we're not. We're in Brighton. Oops, sorry.
Where is the scruff of one's neck? Do you know?
I think it's right where your hairline
Turn
meets-
around. Can you turn around?
I think it's where your hairline...
What do you grab on? What do you grab onto?
The scruff.
You want to play with the hose
Remember
after
that?
the show? Oh, really? I have 15 minutes.
I think I'm a little old to play with the hose. Come on, give us a Topo Gigio.
Eddie.
Okay.
I love you, Eddie.
Okay. He's been dead for years.
Who?
Topo Gigio.
Yes.
I know it. I totally know it.
That was me doing the spell. Nia, that was
my
pretty
God.
spectacular.
That was a riot.
Right. It's also humiliating. We're
is.
done.
But you know what I always say?
So he said that was just from yesterday. No, that's not true.
I always
We
say,
gotta go.
just because you can't talk and put three words together,
You can still have a radio
doesn't
show.
mean you can't have a career in the radio. And I
Exactly.
feel like I'm an example of that,
You're
Jim.
beautiful.
Can't talk, and here I am.
Okay, thank
anyway,
you.
thank you for listening
Gotta
to another
go.
edition of Boston Public Radio News. That was absolutely fantastic.
That was pretty
Keep
funny,
up this
yeah.
24/7 wherever podcast or check out our TikTok page. Tune in tomorrow. We are live at the Boston Public Library with NPR's Eric Deggans for this week's edition of our media analysis segment, Press Play, plus Live Music Friday with musicians from this year's Charles River Jazz Festival. Environmentalist Bill Kibben, media maven
Bill
Sue
McKibben.
excuse
Yeah,
me.
thank you.
Media maven
Only known him
Sue
for 20
O'Connell,
years,
back
so it's
from the,
okay.
well, I've known you for a long time, and I can't get your name
That's a
right
good
either,
point,
obviously.
yeah. Yep.
Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, Mia Harmon, Patrick Lally, John LaClaw Parker, Jamie Bologna. Thank you very much for helping us today. Tune into The Culture Show with Jared Bowen, which starts immediately after we do here on 89.7 GBH.
Can I say one thing before we go?
Yes.
I knew it. I knew it.
I'm Jim Browdy.
That was a kid that tried to win the spelling
it's so
bee.
sad,
And he
actually.
lost the spelling
Yeah,
bee.
wrong.
He
We
didn't
got to
know
go.
it,
Jim
as it turned
Browdy,
out.
see you tomorrow at the library.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and members of the GBH Champions and Beacon Circles. These most generous annual contributors lead the way in sustaining GBH as a public media resource available and free to all. Learn more at gbh.org/support.
How far would you go to repair your past? When a single mother is approached by a wealthy businessman for a job she accepts, but the job is just the beginning. The thrilling 4-part series